Who is working on Sunday night, so we're having a fall festival, which is great. Sponsors. It's my last year. So we wanted to pick up something cool last day of school. I take a ride back to and just pick them up and figure out. That's why they have Bob does, because he's such a great kid. Shepherding such a good person. Derek is so important. Yes. So, and he's so he gets other things we can some pops. You were there for that big event. Recognize us here. That's cool. That's cool.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, September the 19th. To start the meeting, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be aware this meeting is being live streamed on the Township YouTube channel, and also the meeting may be audio or video recorded by people present in the room. So we have a great first item of business tonight. It's to recognize the promotion of Sergeant Matthew Grandizio to Lieutenant. To kick it off, I'm going to say a few words, and then I'm going to hand it over to Chief Carroll. I'm going to come up here. So actually first, I would like to start with a wider recognition. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we thank the West Goshen Police Department for your efforts in support of successfully apprehending the convicted criminal who recently escaped from the Chester County Prison. In particular, we express our gratitude and high praise to our emergency response team officers who were very active in the search over the 2-week period, and were in the area to assist with his capture. Once again, we have a great reason to feel proud of the performance of our police department. The dedication of the officers and command staff to their duties and their commitment to the service of residents, and, as demonstrated in this latest incident, to the wider Westchester area public is outstanding. The reputation of the department is exceptionally strong, and the team continues to earn the highest respect within the law enforcement and legal community for its professionalism. So thank you. So, good evening. Should I say Sergeant or Lieutenant? I'm not quite sure. I'm still a Sergeant right now? Okay, so good evening, Sergeant Grandizio. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, I want to extend a well-deserved congratulations to you on your promotion to Lieutenant in the West Goshen Police Department. For over 15 years since joining the West Goshen Police Department at 22 years of age, you have served your community with pride, protecting the public from those who cause harm, and caring for those who need help. Your promotion comes as a result of a competitive selection process. You and other sergeants interested in the position were asked to perform most of the responsibilities of a lieutenant for a period of time, with each candidate rotating through the assessment. After careful consideration and discussion by command staff, you were selected to continue to perform the duties for an extended evaluation period. The board is impressed by this rigorous merit-based selection process, and your success speaks to the high-quality police officer that you are. The board values what you bring as a new addition to the command staff, and as always, we encourage a learning and continuous improvement environment. So please offer your observations and ideas on how something could be improved, because that is a critical piece of how the department maintains a reputation for excellence in policing. My best wishes for a continued successful police career in the years ahead, and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you to the board for your continued support of our department and letting us do this during the meeting. We certainly appreciate it. And I think a second thank you is due to the Honorable Martin Gosh for coming to perform the swearing in for us. Because of my mindset, I had notified him very late, but he was very kind to join us and perform the ceremony. We thank you. As the chairman just said, Matt started his career with us as a police officer in 2008, but he began before that as a college intern during his Westchester University days. After that, he became a dispatcher with our department before being sworn in 2008 as one of our officers. Since then, he has served in the patrol division, the traffic safety unit, and as a patrol supervisor. We're very lucky to have Matt, and we're very lucky to be able to promote him this evening. But there's a couple people here joining him from his family tonight. His father, Dave, his wife, Danielle, his mother, Debbie, his wife, Erin, and his children, Madeline, and oh my goodness, Gabrielle are here. Madeline and Gabrielle will be performing some very important duties here in a couple of minutes. But I'm pretty sure no one here is here to hear me talk, so we're going to turn it over to Judge Gosh here. And if you would perform the ceremony, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening, sir.
All right, you want to raise your right hand, your left hand on the Bible, and repeat after me, please. I, Matthew Grandizio,
I, Matthew Grandizio,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear,
that I will support, obey, and defend
do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and that I will enforce the laws of this Commonwealth
and that I will enforce the laws of this Commonwealth
and the ordinances of West Goshen Township,
and the ordinances of West Goshen Township,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
I do further swear that I will uphold, obey, and enforce
I do further swear that I will uphold, obey, and enforce
the law without consideration
the law without consideration
to a person's race,
to a person's race,
color,
color,
sex,
sex,
religious creed,
religious creed,
sexual orientation,
sexual orientation,
age,
age,
national origin,
national origin,
ancestry,
ancestry,
handicap, or disability,
or disability.
as I serve as a lieutenant
As I serve as a lieutenant
for the West Goshen Police Department.
for the West Goshen Police Department.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Matt, if you would like, we can do some further photos with the rest of your family. We're happy to take a 5-10 minute break here and just give you some time to celebrate the moment, if you would like to do that.
I think we'll be okay. You guys can
All right. Well, thank you. Very good. So we're going to move on then to the next item on the agenda. Very good. So next on the agenda is public comment. So this is the opportunity for anyone attending who would like to raise a new issue that is not on the agenda tonight, or who has a question or comment for the board or staff. Is there anyone with a question or comment? Doug?
Good evening, everyone. Douglas White. I just have a few comments here for public comment. Does the township currently have a formal employee wellness program on site, in-house? A formal employee wellness program. Do we have one?
What do you mean by that?
If anyone has a problem, they can get help?
Oh, yes.
We do. Okay, good. Also, in light of having the firefighters recognized with tax credits, I was hoping that the township could somehow recognize other volunteers in the township, such as the Chester County Hospital, CDIM, and that they are, which are all located in the township. Those volunteers are also very important. I spent a lot of time at the hospital this year.
Well,
but
while I completely agree with you, they do commendable and outstanding work. The law that allowed the board to pass the ordinance that was done earlier this year was specific to volunteer fire and EMS personnel.
I understand. It's just a comment. Also, the Borough Library came and did a presentation, and they requested an increase in funding. I think the funding to the Borough Library started in 2012 or 13, at an amount of around $2,500. It was a gesture. It's not mandated, but the township thought it was the right thing to do. I would like to see the Borough Library have some programs in the township, preferably here at the township building, such as reading programs or speaker series or something related to what the library does here in the township. It's a comment. And also, there was some questions about sidewalks last meeting, and not to speak for the whole planning commission, but just for myself, I'm certainly an advocate for sidewalks when they're indicated. Although there are certain things that have to be really considered. We don't want to encourage people to walk where they shouldn't be walking, and the liability that can be involved. There's other things. I just wanted to throw that out there. But as a member of the planning commission, I will certainly consider sidewalks when they're appropriate. I just wanted to make that a public comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Is there anyone else who'd like to have a comment or raise a question? Yes, sir. You just state your name, please.
Charles Golden, West Goshen resident. Also a Republican committeeman here that uses Glen Acres School for our polling place. I see on the agenda that the township building is being considered for the polling place. It's a big responsibility. So I just want to go over some of the things that I addressed with the county commissioners after our primaries this year. First of all, it's about safety. There was unsafe pathways for the handicapped people. They had them walking up a ramp, down a ramp. It was a mess. There was one handicapped parking spot for all handicapped voters. And with regard to parking, because we were using the back side of the school for the last two elections, the signage for where to park was not there. And at the beginning of the day, counting the cars for the people working the polls and the 10 or so people that line up, you're going to need over 20 parking spaces. And as you get into the major elections, I'm sure it's going to be more. So I don't know if we have that here at the township building. A couple of other things that don't involve safety necessarily is there's a 10-foot rule for campaigning leading up to that area or the room where you do voting. And for the last few elections, that hasn't been paid any attention to. And we need to make sure that we go back to a system where tables for campaigning is set up well away from where the voters can hear the people or see the people. The evening lighting, maybe it's a safety issue, but the evening lighting at the Glen Acres School was non-existent during the temporary construction, and we had to bring our own floodlights from our house just to have a little bit of lighting. Needless to say, people who were voting who were handicapped towards the evening, they'd have to walk through the dark parking lot. Bad weather protection. I actually think that a different location must be picked other than the Glen Acres School. It appears that the architect did not take into consideration that being a polling place, so I don't see any roofs protection on the new doors. I don't even know where they expect to what doors they expect to use for the polling. The back area requires that both parties, 3 parties, set up tables outside. So of course, during bad weather, setting up outside is very impractical. On the silly side, campaign signs. So for the last few elections, what's happened is the day before, one party populates every square inch of the entranceway with campaign signs. So of course, when the other party shows up, it gets to be quite a mess. So I would ask that you consider where campaign signs will be and that you treat both parties equally. And I'm not sure if you're considering the township building for this election, but one of the issues with the temporary polling place in the back of Glen Acres is no notice was sent out. A lot of people drove up and drove away. Some people parked out in the front and walked quite a long distance to find where to vote. So if we're going to use it for this November's election, somebody better notify every voter instead of the parties having to notify their own voters. Somebody better notify every voter where it is, where they can park, and then follow through with it. Let me just check here. I think that's it. So, once again, big responsibility. Glen Acres for many, many, many years was the perfect place, and now it's not. Now it's totally changed, and the temporary situation for the last 2 elections was poorly thought through, and I think the county commissioners understood my comments about the safety, and they said go fix it, but I didn't know that would mean consider moving it. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate that. And obviously, you may have seen on the agenda tonight, we do have an item related to a request to relocate the voting precinct of West Goshen S3 to the Township building. So your comments are appropriate, and we can certainly consider that when we get to that agenda item. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Other comments or questions? Public comment, Margie?
Good evening. It's nice to see everyone again. I'm Margie Swart. I'd just like to start off by asking what is the name of the firm that the township engaged to conduct the internal review of the township's workforce?
Beckett Siemens.
Siemens. Was the township under contract with them currently, or did a vote need to be taken to engage them again?
So at the January organization meeting, they were appointed as our labor law attorney.
Okay. And they handled the police negotiation, or was that?
Yes, they were our legal support for the negotiation.
Okay. Is the township engaging a forensic audit?
No.
Can I ask why not?
There is no evidence of financial fraud.
Okay. I brought this up some time ago, a couple of years ago. With board approval, non-uniformed hourly employees are permitted to end their workday at 1 o'clock preceding a paid holiday. Yet they can submit their timesheet indicating that they worked a full 10-hour day instead of 7 hours. There's roughly 56 non-uniformed hourly employees. So by my calculation, that amounts to about $60,000 a year of compensated time for hourly employees that is not work.
Are you using all paid holidays?
Yes, I am.
Well, I don't believe it's applicable to all paid holidays. Chris, do you want to just describe the process there?
So essentially for, I would say, half of the holidays that are granted by the board, I will allow employees to leave 3 hours early prior to the end of their workday.
But they get paid as if they work 10 hours.
Yes, and the board, once we got turned, the board endorsed that practice, and it's something that is very commonplace. And I, in fact, stay here to make sure that this building is accessible until 5 p.m.
Okay. What would happen from a legal standpoint if an employee that is technically still getting paid for those 3 hours were to be involved in an accident? Could anything happen as far as then they would be able to claim workers' comp because they were technically on the clock, even though they weren't working?
Being on the clock is different than being paid. They're not on the clock if they went home. So they're no longer working in the scope of their duties if they went home.
Okay. All right. Through the grapevine, it's my understanding that some employees feel that this is kind of hypocrisy by the board, just due to the fact that 4 employees were placed on administrative non-paid leave based off of some alleged time card abuses. So just as a tax-paying citizen, I just see time theft is time theft, whether it's approved or not. It's taxpayer dollars, so I'm having a hard time. And
there's a difference between a board-approved paid time off process and one that is not known to the board and was unauthorized. So there is a difference.
Okay. Just a quick Google search revealed that several years ago, 2 former Turnpike employees were arrested for stealing time and using vehicles for personal use. The arrests were the result of an investigation by the Attorney General's office. I'm requesting that this board contact either the Chester County District Attorney's Office or the Attorney General's office and request an investigation into what I believe for many, many years now, the criminal enterprise that is West Goshen Township.
I disagree with your assertion that it's a criminal enterprise here. The matter was managed as an internal township review only. We used our labor law attorneys. Per standard practice, any referral to law enforcement, including the Chester County DA's office or any other appropriate agency, would be dependent on the outcome of the review. The board and our labor law attorneys was determined that no referrals were necessary.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I also do believe that an investigation needs to be taken upon because there seems to be $170,000 off the books from what was agreed upon. The developer of Greystone had agreed to give the township $1 million if the township approved the neighborhood improvement district. Right now, at this point in time, public documents indicate the developer only owes the township about $830,000. And I did in fact send an email almost exactly 1 year ago today, September 21st, 2022. And I asked the township to confirm whether or not this document reflects equipment actually received and currently in possession of the township. It's 1 year later, I have not received an answer to my inquiry. So could you address that $170,000 that's been subtracted from the $1 million that the developer owes the township?
The developer doesn't.
Go ahead.
The developer does not owe the township $1 million in cash total. If you look on that spreadsheet, there are 2 different items. There's one area called a park endowment, which is roughly $832,000, and there's a separate spreadsheet that outlines equipment associated for the park at $172,000, and that is where the $1 million come from. And no, and I believe I did respond to you, but if not, I apologize. The equipment has not been received from the township because at this juncture, this board has not accepted dedication of that park or anything within the Greystone property at this time. In fact, Mr. Colagreco and Mr. Reeser were here on August 15th, and they submitted a letter to do an inspection, and we have not conducted that inspection yet. Lou, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but did I get that correct from the documents?
You're correct.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, the developer still owes the township $1 million upon dedication?
Yes, and when the park is dedicated to the township, they will be obligated under the terms of the NID financing to turn it over to pay the township what is owed for them as part of the bond financing.
Okay. Is there some $170,000 somewhere else that's unaccounted for?
It's not unaccounted for. There is a spreadsheet within that document, and I reviewed that entire bond document that says that there is equipment that is coming through to the total of roughly $172,000. That is where you get the $1 million from.
Okay. And then if you'll just allow me the courtesy, I do have another meeting to be at 7 o'clock, to comment on the agenda item. I thought $850,000 or the building to house equipment at the new Greystone development, I thought that was taken off the table a couple of years ago. I don't think I have to point out the obvious that Greystone is 2.5 miles away, and we have this big, huge, wonderful equipment storage maintenance facility right here on this complex. And I'm told that every piece of equipment the township has, mowers, tractors, everything has its own individual trailer attached to it. So as the employees come here in the morning to start their workday and they're driving over to Greystone anyway, I just feel $850,000 for a maintenance building to store or house equipment is just a total waste of money. Also the purchase of an ATV and the e-bikes, I just question the need for that. I would hope that we get dedication of the park first, we wait a year or 2 or 3 and then determine exactly what kind of control and what kind of storage is needed instead of spending that money or putting it in next year's budget before we even have it in our possession. So thank you very much for your time.
Duly noted your opinion. Have you, Margie. We will have a robust conversation on the capital plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else with a public comment?
I have something.
Yes, sir.
It'll be painless.
You just state your name and address, please.
My name is Steve Vitale from Veronica Road, as you all may know. Question I have is behind my house, there was a chain link fence between the new property. They put a new fence up. They have not removed the chain link fence, and all the shrubbery is growing into my yard. So I want to make you guys notice that this is an issue.
Steve, did you send me an email?
I did talk to Brian.
You did? Okay, good.
I reached out to the builder, I reached out to the owner, who built it, Matthew Pusey, but that's not back.
How long ago was this?
A week.
Week, okay.
Normally he's pretty quick responding, but I think he's trying to get up there. So what he's doing, he put the fence, where the chain link fence is here, my fence on my property line. He left in between, so everything in the middle is growing up and over my fence and through it.
Send me an email with the
Okay.
information. I will contact them
Okay. I mean,
with pictures.
yeah, I will. I just want the chain link fence to be gone, because when I take my fence down, that's what I'm gonna see. This is my dog fence. I'll be moving all my fencing, so.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Chief.
Is there anyone else with a question or comment?
And I'm okay with you paying the employees to leave early.
Is there anyone else with a question or comment? Very good. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is a discussion and possible approval of a final subdivision plan for the Woodlands of Greystone Phase 5 for RLD Greystone LLC, consisting of 121 residential lots.
Lou, are you okay working off this one? I can't see anything. I figure I have one full screen. All right, sorry about that.
Good evening, Mr. Coladirecto. Welcome.
Good evening. Lou Coladirecto representing RLD. This is a process here to allow for a phase line actually to be drawn around the purple lots that you see on the screen in front of you, which we call Phase 5 of 6 at Greystone. We're coming to the conclusion of the project. Phase 6 will probably be before you sometime next spring for approval. But Phase 5, 121 units, 36 singles, which are not part of the age restricted, 61 active adult, which are obviously part of the age restricted, and 24 twins. And Ray can point out the purple of where those various lots are located. It's not a new land development plan, as we advised the Planning Commission, as the board is well aware. The actual land development plan for this was approved many years ago for the entire project, and it's been recorded in phases. When each phase gets recorded, financial security for the improvements in those phases is posted with the township. We have submitted the bonds for Phase 5 to the township. They're in your possession. So all the paperwork is done. This is simply to vote on the Phase 5 plan.
Lou, did the Phase 5 number of units change from the original intent?
It did not.
Did not. There's some small lot line adjustments. Is that really the
Probably
reason?
some minor adjustments here and there. I mean, if these lots are exactly in the same place that they were at the land development plan, I'd be shocked. But are they exactly in the same place, right?
They're pretty close.
Pretty close.
I can't think of what's changed.
But the number's the same, the location's the same. And Phase 6, I guess, in that color code up there, just to give you I'm sure you're all excited about a preview. Will be coming your way in March or April, is up there. Those are the remaining lots. I think there's about maybe 65 or 70 lots in Phase 6. That's it.
Okay, board, do you have questions for Mr. Colagreco? Mr. Gukowski? Any questions? I know the sewer authorities reviewed this phase as well, right?
Yes, they have. And financial security has been provided with the sewer authority as well.
Okay. Our engineers reviewed it, the planning commission's reviewed it, Kristen's reviewed it, or? Yes.
I mean, there was no need to do another resolution because there was an overall resolution that approved the entire land development plan. So
Okay.
Brian, Chris and I discussed that it probably would confuse matters if we did different resolutions, so we didn't feel it was necessary. It's really just approving the phase line.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I believe the only issue that was brought up by any commission was any question about buffers. I think that was addressed.
Yeah, I talked to Ray about that earlier, and Doug, we think that the buffer issue is, we haven't heard anything about the buffer issue for 8 or 9 months. Ray hasn't. He's got boots on the ground. The issue was on some of the lots.
Just the other day, they came through to put a survey marker and they cut a bunch of stuff, vegetation out.
The homeowner?
No, they did. They did. The developers did.
And vegan?
I'm not sure. I wasn't there when it happened, but I saw a new iron pin and survey marker, and they cut down vegetation.
We're at your mom's house.
Yeah.
That's phase 1. We haven't been in there for 2.5 years.
That's okay.
We'll get to that. I mean, the original issue brought up by Doug at the Planning Commission was there was an instance where a homeowner was taking down buffer trees that we had planted, and that really are the responsibility, I guess, of the HOA. And I think that's been resolved. I think they got that all cleaned up. The trees were replanted, but and be replanted. But if homeowners are going to come out here and cut down buffer plantings,
Yeah, I mean, we've been involved in some enforcement actions, and we've been able to demonstrate that they have to, whether it's NV or the HOA, it has to be what the plan requires, which is 20-foot buffer. So, if there's dead or diseased shrub, they're permitted to take that down. But
well, so I met with a homeowner as well to talk about this issue, because I guess where he lives, there's a fence, right, and then there's the wall, and there's a property in Greystone where they're responsible for what's above that portion of the wall, so they wanted to put some stairs to get up there, and then they wanted to install a fence so that they could access it or something. So is it the responsibility of the HOA to go in and remove vegetation? I thought that entire buffer was the responsibility of the homeowner.
Nobody's supposed to remove vegetation, right? The 20-foot buffer is a buffer not to be disturbed. And I think that's what Doug says, that it's been disturbed. What's been happening is the developer keeps the 20-foot clear, right? Sells the lot to NV, NV keeps it clear. The homeowner buys the lot, they go in there and bring their landscaper in and start clearing it away. What you probably met with was the homeowner who wanted to put the, or was it NB that wanted to put the stairs up to the wall?
It was a homeowner in the Caswallin neighborhood.
Right, but they're not, that 20-foot buffer is supposed to remain undisturbed. In phase one, the homeowners disturbed it, and NV paid to put it back. Craig oversaw that, putting it back. In fact, this board approved the buffer plan back at that time. And the location you're talking about is still behind your mom's house. That's still phase one. And it's got to be the homeowners at this point in time, because NV's even been out there for a good year at this point when they replanted it. So I don't know what the continuing problem is there, but it's not supposed to be disturbed. Those plans were put in because it was disturbed. Rick made them put them back in. Now, if they're knocking them down again or not, I'm not sure.
No, I don't think it's being disturbed. I think there's just some general misunderstandings between these two neighborhoods of what property belongs to who. And so I think
The 20-foot buffer is part of the individual homeowner's lives.
Right.
The HOA is not responsible for anything.
and they can't go in and disturb it. They can't take down
That's right.
trees. they can't-
The HOA, the only responsibility they have is to maintain that wall that you talked about. But where there's no wall, the HOA doesn't have a responsibility.
Other questions from board members? So before we look for a motion from the board, I'd like to see what public comments they have, because this development's a big development, and we often have people in attendance who have comments. I'd like to hear those before the board considers a motion. Doug, you have another comment?
Yes. If you can, well, I have a question about the retaining wall on the east side of Gershwin. Why don't you go up there? Now, the planning commission did say yes to this, but I forgot to ask the question. But there's a retaining, where are we? Yeah, right here. There's a retaining wall that runs here and then continues here. There's a gap in the retaining wall. It ends and then it starts again. Now on the plan, that gap is supposed to be 80 feet wide, but in reality it's about 128 feet wide. Is that going to be, is the retaining wall going to be lengthened or dealt with so that you retain the 80-foot planned dimension?
No, I can answer that. The Carroll Engineering approved a field revision to that wall. The concern at the time is building that wall has a grid behind it, and that grid was going to go into the buffer.
Yes.
So the engineers redesigned that wall from the land development plans. It was sent to Carroll and Rick for review. They approved it before the final. It was a field change to the size of the wall. But the wall isn't going, the wall's there. It's not going to.
It's not going to be changed or lengthened?
No.
So the 80, yes, I understand because it curves out and in. I understand that.
Right.
So the 80-foot dimension, I guess, was altered to be what it is now.
That's right, and that was township approved, that alteration.
When we did that, the planning commission, we did that?
It didn't come, it was a field change.
A field change?
Yeah.
Like a permit change type of thing?
Right, the land development plan didn't have the full details of the retaining walls on site, because you need soil samples and you need a lot of other field work to determine the final wall design.
Okay.
So the land development plans approved a typical schematic of the walls, subject to the township engineer's further review. So every single wall on Greystone has been submitted for review to both Carroll and the township engineer. So we don't build any walls without them knowing, and they inspect them too. It doesn't go back before the planning commission or supervisors, though. Unless it's completely out of conformance with, you know.
Oh, so the scope of it depends on the scope of the change.
Yes.
As far as whether it's going to come before the planning commission or the board.
Right.
So this scope was considered to be not that.
Right.
Okay.
Because the change actually preserved the buffer. The change didn't affect any lot lines. It didn't affect the road. It didn't affect the house. It didn't affect anything other than the wall itself.
So where that gap is and the land slopes down, there's no concern for runoff or erosion at all?
It's supposed to be stabilized.
Stabilized?
Yeah, and it's supposed to be grass.
Grass.
Grass mowed, right? It's not supposed to be.
And I guess if there's any problem, they can add rip-rap rock, if possible. I mean, if in the future, short of doing anything to a retaining wall.
Yes, it's intended to be lawn.
Right.
And yes, they could add riprap, but I don't know if the homeowners want that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Margie?
Yeah, I'm just interested in who currently owns those lots. Is that still under Baratheon?
Phase 5 lots?
Yeah.
Right now it is.
Yeah, right now it's right.
I'm just curious because then when that sale goes, is it going to go through? So then,
We get this plan recorded.
okay. So I'm just, because I keep an eye on the real estate transfer
Yes.
tax receipts, and that'll be a very large tax.
Well, they don't buy it all, NB won't buy it all at once, but the developer, I don't know if the developer's buying it in phases from the estate or it's buying it all at once.
It allows the two of them, it allows Ryan and RLD to stagger the sale of these lots. Right now, they don't have that ability, or they could take them all down at once, which I don't think that's going to happen. They'll take them down as they need them, probably in blocks, but that's what recordation of this plan allows to happen. Right now, they can't purchase any lots in phase 5.
And then as far as the escrow, was the amount to include also the extension of public streets or public roads?
The escrow about half of the lots are private streets and about half of the lots are on public streets. The escrow covers public and quasi-public improvements. So even in the private streets, the escrow covers that because it affects more than one homeowner. So all the streets are covered by the escrow in phase 5.
Right, and I'm just asking that as confirmation that all the bond revenue from 2018 has been spent. So
It's not, you're referring to the NID? It's not bond revenue. The
Well,
developer posed the bond to secure that he's going to build those roads. And the developer has posted that bond in advance of this meeting.
got it. All right, thank you.
Just to be clear, did Brian approve the bond amount?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
it
okay,
did.
thank you, because he's not here tonight. So, are there any other public comments or questions for the representatives here?
Just for the record, the Chester County Planning Commission did review this and they had no issues.
Correct.
Okay, well, I will make the motion to approve recording a final subdivision plan for the Woodlands of Greystone Phase 5, consisting of 121 residential units. Is there a second? Thank you, John. Any board comments or questions on the motion? Are there any public comments or questions on the motion? Hearing none, we're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda is item number 6, discussion and possible approval of resolution number 25, 2023, granting final land development approval of the preliminary/final subdivision and land development plan for Rock Hill Real Estate LP for the construction of a building addition and additional parking at 820 East Washington Street. That was a mouthful. Okay, so could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good evening. Andrew Stahl, counsel for the applicant. With me here tonight is Robert Stanislaw, the president of the applicant, and Keith Lieber, the applicant's engineer. You will recall that this project was actually before you many months ago with respect to the initial phase, which related to zoning approval. Just to refresh you, the property is located at 820 East Washington Street. It's situated in the I-3 General Industrial Zoning District. It's actually tucked away in an industrial park. It consists of 2 parcels, so you see up on your screen there. Parcel 5 is an existing building. Parcel 4 to the left or to the west is an entirely gravel area which is used for parking. To the south of the building in the property entirely is Goose Creek. The prior use was sales and repair of power equipment, I think lawn equipment and the like. So the applicant, by way of background, is associated with a portion of the main line, McLaren the main line, and they're proposing to use this project or this property in connection with those dealerships. So fast forwarding, what you're seeing there is a rendering of the applicant's proposed project. It's just essentially a building addition, or an addition to the existing building. You'll see that in the red there on the Unit 4, which was the gravel area, that is the proposed building addition. It's kind of oddly shaped, especially towards Goose Creek, because there was an issue with a floodplain, and that was the gist of the zoning application that was previously before you. Specifically, the 100-year floodplain encompassed almost the entire site. We had to make application to FEMA to relocate that floodplain. That was approved by FEMA, so that blue line, the blue dotted line that you see going around the site, that is the new floodplain. The applicant did receive zoning relief from the zoning hearing board. There were 2 special exceptions that were granted. One was a special exception to permit parking in the floodplain area. That was approved, and as was a special exception to permit grading in the floodplain area, specifically a permeable surface within that floodplain area. So around the building addition, where you see that gray shade or green shaded area, that's going to be this eco-raster material. It's like a turf, so it's actually a permeable material. So the applicant has received approval from the condo association of which it's a part. There are 3 waivers that are before you. One is with respect to just sanitary, the details of changes in the sanitary. There's not going to be any changes to the sanitary system. The second is that with respect to disturbance of existing ground cover near the bank of a waterway. We are near Goose Creek, but we are staying away and actually putting back green space, which is, we think, a very big improvement for the area. As I mentioned before, the area is entirely gravel and impervious on Unit 4. You'll see at the south part of the site, we're actually adding back a significant area of green space. And that was at the request of, I believe, this board and the zoning hearing board, so we are making some accommodations. It's going to be used for repair and storage of McLaren vehicles. And lastly, no customers are going to be going back to this area. If you're familiar with the area, it's, like I said, in an industrial park, so it's not an area that's traversed or sees a lot of pedestrian traffic anyway, but it's more so the cars will be taken back by employees and serviced and then returned. I'm happy to answer any questions, as are the applicant and the applicant's engineer.
Board members, questions?
I had some questions, mainly concerns with Goose Creek being right there. I'm surprised that they allowed the permit grading because that area, number 1, is flooded already extensively. It almost looks like an ocean. So I'm shocked that they allowed that. And also the parking lot area with Goose Creek right there. I have a lot of concerns about that. And also, I know that they recommended that maintenance be done to make sure that there's nothing getting into the creek. How do I know that those measures are going to be taken, and how often and the frequency? Is there a plan of action for that? To make sure that somebody's monitoring that area to make sure nothing's getting in there. And the other concern I have is automotive repair activities taking place in the parking lot there. I have real concerns about contamination, just knowing what is used and what chemicals could be used in that process. Whether it's paints, oils, greases, chemicals, you've got hydrocarbons, you've got TPH. There's a lot of concerns I have with nasty chemicals that could be getting into the creek. So there needs to be some type of plan of action to make sure this is monitored from a maintenance and operations standpoint constantly.
And I'm happy to address, so the flooding was a main concern before this board and the zoning hearing board. So one of the key emphasis for this project was making sure that flooding concern was addressed. And that isn't just with this board and zoning hearing board, but also with the local condominium association. What we're doing is taking a site that was almost entirely impervious surface and adding back a significant amount of green space. And that's at the request of all 3 entities that I just mentioned. including and especially the area in the parking lot. So instead of having that just be asphalt and impervious surface, we're spending the extra dollars to put permeable surface there, including putting all green space on the bottom of the site. With respect to doing what's promised, I'll say I do a lot of the development work for this applicant. He's not a developer, he's a growing business, and all of his sites are taken to the utmost care. He puts a lot of money and effort and time into his sites, so he has no problem adhering to any promises or issues or code enforcement, anything that comes up during the use of this site. And lastly, with respect to contamination of cars, it's actually a safety issue. All of the work is going to be done inside. So a lot of the questions we'll get with respect to these types of projects is, well, are the cars stored outside? Are they worked on outside? Everything is done inside. It's because these are, to put it bluntly, these are very expensive commodities, these McLaren vehicles. So everything is done inside. So we don't really have any concern at all that anything would be run off into Goose Creek.
What about the sinks where they discharge to?
I can have the applicants here.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's any technical questions. Good evening, Keith Lieberman, T&M Associates, civil engineer representing Rock Hill Real Estate. Could you repeat the question?
The sink drains to, where do the sinks drain to?
Where to the drains from inside the
Where's the
building?
final discharge, yeah.
Okay,
For
so
the effluent.
any drains from inside the building, so 100% of the work on the vehicles will be done inside the building. There'll be drains inside the building, nothing will drain from inside the building out of the building. And there'll be traps in the building, so traps to capture any contaminants or spills or the like any, within building codes for facilities like this, it's all covered within the building codes. And then any excess material would discharge into the sanitary sewer system with the drains in the building, as is typical once it goes through the traps that are specified under the building permit application requirements. Outside the building, only for storage units. It's no different than a parking lot. There'll be cars parked in those parking spaces, some employees. Some vehicles may be just getting jockeyed around or stored temporarily. And any runoff within that parking lot, like any other parking lot, is just going to run off of the parking lot. What's unique about ours is that we're using, as you can see from the exhibit before you, almost the entirety of it is permeable pavers. So it's a reinforced turf, so that vehicles can drive on it, but grass will actually grow through it. So any kind of runoff, anything, even if there was like one drop of oil that came out of a car, right? It'll go on to into that grassy area. If there's rain, unlike any of the parking lots around here where it just runs off the parking lot into the sewer system and then directly into the stream, this runoff will go into the surface of the ground and be completely filtered before it could ever reach Goose Creek. So this is a pretty significant enhancement.
And how's it being filtered?
Through the soils. Through the soils themselves.
And that's going to be saturated eventually, right?
The soils?
The soils can be saturated with whatever's being filtered through that
Yeah,
material.
they could, but again, this is a parking lot. It's no different than the parking lot here in the township building.
Is the reinforced turf part of your stormwater management?
Yeah.
So you have a stormwater management O&M agreement, and part of that O&M agreement, I'm sure there are notes on the post-construction stormwater management plan that talk about the maintenance of that, because it is one of their BMPs. That is something that if it's not being properly maintained, the township has enforcement rights.
Correct. Thank you.
So part of that O&M agreement might be a little different than a typical one, that we will ask for inspection for any oil spill or whatever.
The agreement stays the same, but what's the meat of the agreement is the attachment, which is the plan that has all the notes. So that's really the critical part of the agreement, and that's something that Brian reviews and approves and is specific to the BMP that's proposed.
Yeah. So that's way different than a regular paved parking service. Right.
Or a basin, so the maintenance of it's different.
I think it seems really great. I like the pervious surface. That additional green space you're talking about, that's those shrubbery in the bottom left corner right there?
That's correct. So it's, if I'm using this correctly, it's right along here, all of that.
And that's,
and then
you're saying that's gravel right now, or is that?
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, it's a combination of gravel and impervious surface. So there's actual asphalt paving out there in sections, and other sections have gravel. There's the aerial that shows right there.
So this is all, and to your point as well, this was all impervious and was just used for parking of these large machines and other vehicles. So what we're changing is we're putting green space all along here and along the south side as well. We're doing up the Goes Creek.
And how are you going to prevent the flooding? I mean, that area is
It-
really bad.
It does not flood. It does not flood, actually, this site. The site is, sort of sits on an island within the 100-year flood. If we can, can I control it?
Yeah.
Down. Okay. So the blue, Drew, if you could trace the blue line there, the dashed blue line. You'll see that dashed blue line there? That's the 100-year floodplain.
So it floods outside of that?
Outside of that, yes. So the property across the street does get flooded. The property probably to our left gets flooded. Obviously, Goose Creek and stuff on the other side of Goose Creek gets flooded. Can I see the? So I'll kind of explain the history behind this too. So Goose Creek sort of originates back kind of by Kmart area there, if you're familiar. That's where the genesis of Goose Creek is. It originally came down, Goose Creek used to actually go straight down to Washington Street is today. Many, many years ago, it was sort of relocated, so it does like a hard turn here and a hard turn here and comes this way. So this area is actually a little bit of high ground. What will actually happen during a large storm event is as Goose Creek comes down here and fills the bank, it jumps the bank of Goose Creek, and then it floods down into this whole area here, and then obviously a portion continues along here. But the portion that's continuing along here is just the water that did not jump the bank of Goose Creek. So when it gets to a certain amount, it actually overflows Goose Creek, comes down in this area and floods out this area, which is a lower lying area. Our property actually is frankly high and dry, and all the work that we're doing will have zero impact on the flooding out there.
Can you explain to Tina maybe the process that you went through to get the FEMA to approve the revision? I mean, that's a very detailed study that only certain types of engineers know how to do it. So that's something that they have to submit evidence and proof to FEMA that what FEMA had considered to be the floodplain is really not what's happening out there in the field. And they show them those studies, and FEMA says, okay, we agree with you. So they've done that work, and we rely upon FEMA to designate what the floodplain is.
So it's not going to change the grading on the surrounding areas to make their problem worse.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, and as council mentioned, we went through a very detailed, rigorous engineering study. We go out there and we actually survey like every 25 feet these cross sections through there, and we modeled it with a very sophisticated computer program, which is the exact program that FEMA uses to model floodplains throughout the entirety of the country. And there's a very prescribed process with FEMA where we can make an application to request a revision to their map based on that. So if you were to look at the flood maps today, it shows this whole area is being flooded. We believe that to be inaccurate. That's why we went through this entire process where we modeled it. We defined this line. It's been through that process with FEMA. FEMA has approved that, and we have what's known as a conditional letter of map revision. As soon as all the improvements are built out there, it's conditional only because FEMA wants us to then actually build everything, do a final survey of this property, and then file final paperwork, which is known as the letter of map revision. Once we do that, they review that, they approve that, and the actual flood map is officially revised.
If you hadn't gotten that approved, your client probably would not have been able to build anything on this.
Correct. That was always a condition. And that process with FEMA took us like 8 or 9 months.
Years.
Years. How about DEP? Did they get involved in all DEP?
This is less than an acre, so it doesn't require any DEP permitting or approval.
If I can just put one point on that, is the applicant's inventory, as I said, is like very, very expensive to put in non-legal terms. So one McLaren, I don't know how much.
We're not telling.
But
We have an idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I say that.
We know what they cost.
When this site was identified as a potential site, if there were significant flooding issues, given the inventory, it wouldn't.
I would never consider it.
Yes.
Right.
And I can speak on the record that I've been to Mr. DeSantis' facilities, many of them. They're the most immaculate service facilities you will ever step foot in. It's incredible the way he runs his operation. So I will assure you that pollution and contamination will be a non-issue on the site.
Will there be any underground storage tanks there?
Should. I've been there before. So, Robert DeSantis, so these are great questions, and these guys
always paid by the hour, so I didn't answer precisely. So you still answer a couple of your questions clearly. Outside, will it make, you asked the question was, will it make it worse for neighbors? It's going to make it much better because of the surfaces that we've added. Also, you asked another question about contaminants, and we used the example of if there's even a small oil drop. The likelihood of that happening is infinitesimal because these cars were built to such exact tolerances. To answer your next question, though, there's no tanks or anything that will be holding any dangerous substances. Also, even the lifts are powered by water. So these are environmentally sound and clean, and please visit any of our operations. Please come see our Pollution Storage. We have surgery centers in Jefferson. I can't say it. It's very clean. Look at you.
That would be dangerous. I might love one.
I would love to. I'm on a hospital board. We have incredibly high standards. We're also Porsche Premier and McLaren dealer. We operate at preposterously high standards. So these cars, obviously, they're not being fixed outside, and they're being fixed really with kick gloves. And you'll see there's not high volume, and they're done in, as I said, very precise tolerances. So please come visit our Porsche store where you'll see how we operate this. We clean the floors twice a day, for example, in our store, so you won't see any spills or any issues. You won't have environmental issues. It'll be the cleanest site in your township. That's quite a statement. So please come visit us. All right. Thank you for your consideration. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So first of all, thank you for listening to the board. I remember we specifically talked about making sure the plantings were of a type and style that we'd like to see in future. I know our ordinances don't keep up with some of the desires of board members. So I saw on the particular list that the native plantings, deciduous trees, and shrubs is excellent. So thank you for that. Two questions. So the whatever it's called, eco-raster, the reinforced turf, it goes all the way up to the front of the building?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, these spaces here were actually relocated. We were able to, in the final plan, move the ADA spaces here, so actually all of that is now green.
When I looked at the information, it looks like you're going to fill in a loading dock on the other unit.
Yes.
Do you need a loading dock for either of these two units going forward?
No, we're making ramps.
Yeah, we have actually there's a door.
Delivery.
Yeah, we're keeping that loading space there actually. We're
adding ramps.
We're likely going to fill it in. If you're familiar with the site, it slopes down. We're probably just going to level it out. So we're going to keep that as a delivery location, and then we have a set of doors here to enter the building with the vehicles.
Okay. One of the issues that came up, or suggestion for you to consider, was there something you could do in terms of either a green roof or how you could manage the rainwater that falls on the building roof? I believe there's some kind of stormwater mitigation best management practice as part of this design. You haven't talked to it yet. Can you describe what that is, please?
Yeah, so we have downspouts in the rear of the building, and they're connected into a subsurface, essentially like a French drain system. So the water comes off of the roof instead of just discharging straight out of the Goose Creek. It actually goes into this French drain system and then percolates.
Slowly perks.
Brian's not here, so we usually ask him, but could you just give it kind of the reference design standard for that? What is the kind of improvement you would see over a typical roof with downspouts? What's the retention or the slowdown in rate of?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're probably looking at up to half inch to an inch storm event, like that'll just get soaked up into the ground. The larger events will run off. But what I can say is that in combination with the reduction in impervious, which I believe is 10% reduction, it's much greater on our property. Recall, this is a condo lot, so it's 10% of the entire property. I think we're reducing impervious through our actions. It's probably more like 20%. The overall volume rate runoff from this site will probably be in the magnitude of 15 to 20%. So an improvement over what's happening today.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
And we're happy to do the landscaping modifications. We just did a building in Greenwich, Connecticut, and our neighbors in Devon, which happened on arborist, by the way. So we had been television. So we appreciate you being much more progressive. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for choosing West Goshen.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great location. This was a great facility. So thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve resolution number 25, 2023, granting final land development for the preliminary final subdivision and land development plan for 820 East Washington Street for Rock Hill Real Estate. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any board comments or questions on the motion? Any public comments or questions? Steve?
Yes, is there a place in there for tractor trailers and car carriers to get in and turn around?
Great question. They won't be dropped off in car carriers, so they're done with really 6-wheel cover. They're brought in one at a time, so they're not going to need any special training. One of my condo neighbors has one of our products. Then they're very happy about this. But that's a great question.
Okay, so there's no, because the street's not very long.
No, it's not.
There's no
Car
place
carriers
to go.
can't go down. Yeah, please understand that these widgets are, we have to be careful. We don't want to pay for any scuffed wheels. And principally by our own fleet of trucks, which are all black and not labeled because our customers, when we pick them up, don't want the neighbors to see what they're doing. So it has to be a clandestine location for security reasons. That's why we hesitate putting on record the value of these widgets. We don't want people there. Security is incredibly high. We have 19 cameras, so really going to have our own. The security there is preposterously strong. So we don't want anybody there, or we certainly don't want to draw any attention to it.
Any other questions from the public?
What's your horsepower limit?
Well, that's a great question, and so they make different variants, but they really range from 600 to 1,000.
Wow, I was going to say 5.
Yes. So if you'd like to upgrade the car,
I almost lost my license for my other car. I was 1 point away, so I'm not going there.
Chief Carroll, are you listening? Is there any other public comment or question on the motion?
when we have special events in the retail center, West Goshen is always there.
And we could try out the cars too. I said we could try out the cars too.
Well, by appointment only in Chief's name.
Okay, let's keep going here, folks. Is there any other public comment or questions on the motion, please? Okay, I think we're ready to take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much for your time.
Don't harm the tire. Thank you.
Okay, next is agenda item 7, discussion and possible authorization to advertise a conditional letter of map revision request to FEMA for 205 Carter Drive. Chris?
Is anyone from TNM here for this application, for this matter? Keith, will you handle this as well?
I am here to represent, if there's any questions. I do represent BT Carter LLC. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
I have a question, because I've never seen, like, for this project you just did, did this similar process have to go to the township? Does the township have to approve you filing this with FEMA?
I don't believe that the township needs to take any.
This is
mean-
actually the same process. So this is the same process we did with 820.
But we didn't have the board approve it, did we?
Yes, we did approve.
You approved going to FEMA?
No, they approved authorizing the public advertisement.
Yes.
Okay, so I must not have been there, because I don't remember that. I didn't-
FEMA requires that we get approval from the township. I don't believe it doesn't require board approval. We just need to know.
Well, the only way to get township approval is through the board. So, but I wasn't familiar with the process of you needing to authorize the advertising. I guess in case.
We did it, whether we needed to or not.
Well, I guess the thought process is that they want there to be a public notice that there's this proposal, and that if people feel they'd be impacted by it, they'd have a public comment period.
That's the idea.
Okay.
It's driven by the federal government, and just very similar to what we just discussed. This project is going through the same process. It's just slightly behind 820, and we're at the point where FEMA is done reviewing our work. They're technically satisfied, but it's a legal federal requirement that it now be advertised.
And I have a question. Does our township engineer, I mean, he's not reviewing the work that you're submitting to FEMA. He's relying upon FEMA to evaluate your study, correct?
Predominantly. We did submit it. We did submit it. Rick was here at the time, but we did submit it to him. He looked at it, gave a couple minor comments, and then we sent it to FEMA.
So this came about, there is an land development application that's before the township, the 205 Carter Drive, for a hotel, I believe is what is being proposed there. It backs up to the Edge property off of Matlock Street in that area. This would authorize the public advertisement component of the requirement with FEMA. Would go through a review period where the public could come and look at any plans similar, exactly the same as what we did with 820 East Washington Street. And just like Keith stated with that application, once it gets a conditional letter of map amendment, and then once it's built, then FEMA approves the final amendment to the floodplain maps. What's interesting about this application, different from East Washington Street, is because the change actually crosses jurisdictional boundaries. They're also going to need approval to authorize from Westchester Borough as well.
Which we've obtained in theory, which is why we wrote this the way we did, which talks about both municipalities, because we just wanted one advertisement for the project.
And I've been copied on all the emails with Kevin Gore from the borough regarding this, and so is Brian.
So has this been to the planning commission already?
No.
Okay, so
I believe the initial submission might have gone last. This has been on our review docket for quite some time, and I believe the initial submission was brought to the planning commission maybe a year ago. But nothing since then. No.
We made an initial land development submission. It went for planning commission, and then we actually, at BET's request, we just put everything on hold because they decided that no one was really going to entertain this project until we got further along with FEMA.
Okay, so just reflecting on, if you like, the success of the process we just had with Washington Street, what happened there was that the board here was able to take a quick look at what the intention was behind the whole effort to get the floodplain reestablished. And the input we gave is the kind of answers that were already to be given tonight about the parking lot, the roof, the landscaping, so it's straightforward. We haven't seen what's intended here. So I'm just making a suggestion or a thought that what would be useful is whatever's planned to be done, assuming you're successful with the floodplain redone, bring it to the board soon. So we get these questions and things along, and so that when you go through the planning commission formal process, we don't end up with us throwing these questions in at the 11th hour. They've already been put on the table, and you have a chance to address them in the land development process. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah.
Well, do you think this project will require relief under the zoning ordinance for floodplain encroachments like 820 did? Because that's where it came from.
Yeah.
It came to you on that zoning application.
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know. My engineers are running the project, to be quite honest with you. It's.
We can just put it in call to action.
I don't know the answer to that question because, again, when we did the model for this project, it radically changed the floodplain. FEMA's model was, quite frankly, garbage. So we remodeled it, and what if you see on the screen today, like pretty much the entirety of the site's in the floodplain. The reality is, it's not. And we had physical people on site after IDEX. We were doing the study. We actually set field people out there to measure the high water mark in Goose Creek, so we could actually calibrate the study based on that. You know, so we could see like sort of where the trees get knocked over and all the debris is on Goose Creek. So the site was dry as a bone right after IDEX. So that was a great data point for us. But to your question, I don't know if we're requesting.
So I guess if you're not planning, and you could, to Sean's point and follow up, that if when you get further along in the analysis, if you don't need any zoning relief, if you did, then that application will come before the board. If you don't, what I think they're asking is that you don't just go through the whole planning commission and then come to the board seeking approval, is maybe get here before to get input.
We'd be glad to do that. What will be the process of doing this? Typically, we're
I think just
the planning commission until we get to you.
We do like the planning commission to review the designs, but as long as there's not some complications or various relief required, etc. So again, when you get to understand what is required to execute the project, you know, if you board check, it might be fine. Otherwise, if it's very straightforward from your point of view, then we go through the regular process. Planning commission.
Well, we'll certainly coordinate with council and find a way. Maybe we come in
Stuff.
formally while we're in the middle of planning commission just to give you an update, get some feedback before we just come with the
I think so, just because of this whole redoing floodplains is very kind of
Doesn't happen a lot.
It doesn't happen.
We do it a lot.
What's going on? We're still
Because-
used to it ourselves, so we would like to understand what has been done and how radical a change it is, etc., and what issues it might raise. So I think for this particular development, it might be worth doing that. So.
Okay, I can bring the actual engineer that does many of these, so he can go into great detail with you.
Okay. So tonight we're just looking to advertise the conditional letter of map revision.
Correct.
Okay. So does a board member would like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
So I have a motion to authorize advertisement of a conditional letter of the map revision request to FEMA for 205 Collier Drive. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Is there any board questions or comments on the motion? Is there any public questions or comments? Okay, we're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
That is charged too high.
Yeah.
All right, so next is agenda item number 8, which is discussion regarding the 2024 capital project list and the updated 10-year capital plan for West Goshen Township. And board. So Chris, you've got the spreadsheet that the board's had an opportunity to look at, and you've got an introduction to it. Would you just like to highlight a couple of things on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to thank all the members of our team for sticking around until 7:20 to discuss this item.
Thank you.
So before the board this evening is the 2024 capital projects for the 2024 budget and then update to the 10-year capital plan. We had a staff meeting to discuss the capital plan on August 8th, and then had individual department head meetings on September 13th. That was to discuss the budget overall for their respective departments. So just some items to note in here. Christine, our finance director, did provide carry forward items from previous years. She highlighted those in orange on the capital plan, and also provided a supplemental spreadsheet that shows what they were budgeted at and the increase for the next year. There are no proposed capital plan items for 2024 for the administration or engineering departments. I'll allow the individual department heads to discuss their departmental capital plans in greater detail. One thing for the Parks Department, we split up the project for West Goshen Community Park between the 24 and 25 budget cycles based on the fact that we have already secured $250,000 in grant funding from Chester County. And the costs that are in the capital plan are based on updated budget projections from Chris Peterson and Carroll Engineering.
So just on that specific point, so the splitting of the community park upgrade into the 2 years, the estimate for the 24's projects has been provided by Chris Peterson.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Everything, Christine has updated everything based on Chris Peterson's numbers that he provided. So roughly the project, I think, was roughly $1.2 million all in. And we are going to, as we talked about previously, seek additional grant funding to continue to offset the cost of that project.
Okay.
One of the major items that was brought up earlier related to the Greystone Park. Brian did provide an estimate for building in the Greystone Park to house equipment in the event that the board wishes to go down that path. The police department is proposing the purchase of an ATV for patrol of the Greystone Park, as well as e-bikes. The e-bikes are not allocated in the capital plan. Those are allocated in minor capital in the general fund. For the streets department has eliminated the vac truck that was previously proposed. However, we have kept the line in the capital plan in the event that we wish to add it back in the future. Speaking with Mark, the rental program is working out effectively. He has outlined the purchase of a second street sweeper, and that's based on a review with Brian and the requirements of our permit with DEP. And based on those requirements, we should have 2 street sweepers in our fleet. And with the facilities department, we've included updates to the meeting room dais, as well as the cost for the EV charging station project and the solar panel project for the public works building. So roughly the total capital plan for 2024 that's before the board this evening is roughly $3.4 million, I believe, across every department.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So what I'd like to do first, before we go through each department, is just go to this list that has the original budget overage request that Christine pulled together. So I'm going to stick a shot looking at some of these numbers. I'm just making sure I'm reading it right. So if you look at, for example, the Ford F-550 truck, the original budget was $90,000, and the overage requested is $87,999. So that means it's double the price as what was originally budgeted.
Yeah, I mean, I think the department heads can answer that better than.
I'm just making sure I understand the spreadsheet first.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I just wanted to highlight, you know, the extra, because the other amounts have already been approved, they've already been budgeted for, we just haven't been able to purchase them because of the supply chain issues. And given those supply chain issues, a lot of the costs have increased, so I just wanted to highlight and sort of spell it out in the budget, you know, what was already approved versus what's sort of not.
So a question on that would be, is there anything, given the new price expected, that we would say, actually, we maybe defer that or prefer to swap it for something else that might be a better value?
I mean, that's up to the board.
Yeah.
So wait, really? $88,000?
Those are just the numbers I was given, so I'm not.
Mark, we'll put you on the spot here.
No, I can
Explain that to me because I.
Yeah, so we were as shocked as you. The 90,000 was we got that price in probably August of 21. And it unfortunately did have the trade included in that 90,000. It shouldn't have, apparently. But yeah, we were shocked at the price, and it was really the body, the truck body, utility body that really increased, particularly the crane that we are replacing. So we thought about not replacing the crane at all, because we already have another vehicle with a crane. Unfortunately, the other vehicle's crane is too small for our needs, as well as the existing crane on this one that we're replacing. So we did increase the capacity of the crane. I think it was like currently 3,800 pounds to like 46, just because the existing crane is just not.
Well, what's that used for? What is this like?
To remove heavy equipment from inside of a well or something, and we need the arm to extend out over. Sometimes you're in a breezeway, there's a wall on either side of you, and there's really no way to get the equipment out.
Like a sewer well.
So this truck is fitted to have a crane on it?
Yeah, so we have a truck next year that, if your approval would be replaced, that has a crane. We're just not going to replace that crane at all. Just get the truck itself and keep, with your approval, keep this, just this one crane, because it is so expensive.
And that truck is in the capital plan, talking 24 or 25, Mike, for the other truck that you're going to limit?
I think it's 25.
25.
So we removed, we did what we could, we took some lighting out, we're not getting a lift gate, which we typically get, just to try to bring the price down a little bit. But yeah, we were shocked as well.
So in terms of where we are with the process for that particular item, have we placed an order for it, or?
There has been a purchase order approved and issued yet.
And it includes the overage amount?
Correct.
Yeah, and do you have a delivery date for it?
No. Well,
So at this point, can they raise the price more or not? Are you locked in with this purchase order? Is there any?
I'm going to defer to all of us here. I think they probably could.
Yeah.
The Fords haven't run any surcharges, but international trucks have. They've given me the option to opt out of the contract, but I chose to wait to the purchase order. I think it was $16,000 this past year, maybe 2 years ago it was like $5,000. That would just set us back tremendously because you have to go through the whole process again to get that order.
Yeah. So we sum up these overage requested, the overage requested for the items that we'd already approved in 20 for this year. Just eyeballing it. What's the number, Christine?
You know, to be perfectly honest, I didn't total it up either. So I actually don't have that.
It's probably like 200,000 to 300,000, right?
It's pretty significant.
Yeah. 300.
Mostly because we took the trade-ins out.
So I thought previously
Right.
that we were budgeting for the full amount, and then typically we would trade in and we would get it. We wouldn't use all that we budgeted for the capital item.
So the capital plan has always supposed to have been the full budget amount.
Yep.
Somewhere along the last few years, when the prices started to go up, those changes of those prices did not, make their way into this capital plan. So there was sort of a little bit of confusion between, the report and sort of what everybody was doing, where it was not necessarily reflective of those full values.
So just so I'm clear, like, again, just Mike, this truck, the F550, the 90 plus the 88, that's the price after we've traded in what you already have, correct? Okay, so when you trade in or decide to sell it on municipal bid, that would be a deduction off these two numbers.
Mr. Chairman, the overage in what Christine provided is $340,167.
How much again, Chris?
$340,167.
Okay. You're all on the same page of understanding the spreadsheet? Any questions you have? Okay. All right, so having got that cleared up, let's go back to the actual question 24. So I like that being an engineer, that's a good start. So moving on from there to what's next? Parks. So parks looks like to me typical equipment other than two big projects, one being the basketball tennis court project that we have the grant for. So the grant these two numbers after the grant's been applied to it, or?
No, that's just the cost without the grant funds being applied to it.
Okay. And we can apply full grant, we can apply and get credit for the full grant that we've been designated if we do this project, is that correct?
Well, the grant was all the projects in Community Park, so a portion of that would be applied to the cost for these two projects in 24.
Okay, and we would have to save the rest of it until we did the restroom and the splash pad.
That's correct. And the one thing also to keep in mind, we do have a application pending with DCNR for these projects that we're going to hear about this fall. So that may be additional funding towards this.
Okay, so if we don't get that grant, and we decide that the board does not want to proceed with the splash pad, we would just basically still be able to do this project and only able to utilize a portion of the grant that we've already got. Is that correct?
We have to go back to the granting entity, which was the county, and speak with them. But the other thing to consider is we are looking at, there's a DCD program that Ken and I have looked at as well that we could also apply for, and we could also try DCNR again.
Okay.
Is that correct, Ken?
That is correct.
What year, the video, I see the video projector screen, I don't see what year we're using.
Where are you? We're on Parks.
Yeah, I'm on Parks.
Which one?
38.
38.
There's no year that we're going to do the
I would
replacement.
have to go back and look that up.
It just says $5,000.
Yeah, the current one's under 5,000. I would have to go back and look that up. The reason a date's not on there is because it's not on our fixed assets plan.
Okay. So why is it on this plan, Christine?
Because ultimately, when we had previously looked at a replacement for it, it was going to be over $5,000, and then we ended up, deferring that and not purchasing it at that time. So I sort of just kept a placeholder here, because in the future, if we go to replace it, it's probably going to be over $5,000, and it should be on this plan.
Okay. Just to go back a minute, what are we using the stormwater pole camera for in engineering, which is $20,000 replacement in 31? What is that stormwater pole camera?
Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what we use for the Army Corps, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Oh, is it? Okay. And what is it doing? Just monitoring the amount?
It just allows you to, I never personally use it, it allows you to go down the inlet and look into it from the box. It doesn't actually travel the pipe. So the camera just stays in the box and looks at the pipe.
Okay, how far can you see, Mark? About 50 feet?
I think it goes 50, maybe 100.
Yeah.
But it probably uses a little bit at 100.
This is, the Army Corps using this type of instrument is what ended up causing us a problem and why we've had to go back and look with the fully televised. with soft dig, right? Yeah, okay.
So at one point, we had talked about doing these projects obviously at the same time because we're going to have people in there digging them, right? And everything on. So does it make sense to do the basketball courts then first, finish that project, and then do the rest of that project the following year?
I think the intention is still kind of to do it all at once. I think it's just the way that it's going to overlap the years, right?
I
That was
thought,
sort of my
actually,
understanding.
I spoke to Chris, and the way we broke it out was Chris recommended that we break it out if we were going to cross it over years.
With that, meaning there's a pause between phases potentially, without having to come back and rework what we've already spent money on.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think one of the issues, particularly with the splash pad component of it compared to, say, the tennis courts and the basketball courts, was running the water lines. Because we're expanding the bathrooms, I think we'll have to run a new water line and then run a water line to the splash pad. Is that correct, Mike?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, we need
What's
sewer,
their
too.
stormwater, yeah, or to the retaining basin right there, right?
Well,
So
this-
that goes near the basketball court, which is why.
I don't think the stormwater was going to be impacted by the basketball courts. I'd have to go back and talk to Chris again. But I know that the tennis court side that had its own drainage configuration, so that was going to be separate from the stormwater work on the eastern side of the yeah.
But we have sewer work too, the pipe.
And that's
Place
why
the pipe too there.
And that's why we were looking at the family bathrooms and the splash pad together, even though the water from the splash pad isn't going to go into the sanitary system.
So maybe actually just to confirm with Carol and Jane with Chris that chunking it up this way is not going to involve wasted dollars if, you know, it takes a year to get more grants to do the second phase or whatever.
Certainly.
Okay.
There's also an issue, and I don't really know when else to bring this up, I might as well just bring it up now. There's a water pump near the tennis courts, you know what I'm talking about? And oftentimes people will turn it on to give their dogs water, but it doesn't shut off, and so you get water just continually pouring out. And so actually when I'll like come back around and I'm walking around the park, I figured out you have to actually raise it up halfway and then it shuts off. But it's totally, no one would really, I think, know how to do that. So that needs to be fixed. Because that's a huge waste of water.
Sounds like that could be fixed now, it
Yeah.
should be fixed
Yeah.
now.
You got that?
Exactly.
You got that, Mike?
Yeah, to your list.
Put it on the to-do list. So if we could go back to parks, and, you know, I have to say I kind of am fully on the same page as Margie relative to the new building. You know, we've had a couple of conversations, public conversations with the developer. We've articulated a board position that in the near term doesn't see really the ability, doesn't see the fact that the developer is going to be in a position to have these ready for dedication, given the amount of further development that's still needed in there. I do agree that we need to see how it all plays out and understand it a little more before we commit to spending money on a building project. So I would personally suggest to my fellow board members that we can take out this $850,000 for 24 and revisit it in the future as and when we get further along with park dedication, etc. from Greystone. What do you think?
That's item 96,
Yeah, we
right?
agree with it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd like to hear a little more about this building that's being suggested anyway, its location and so on and so forth. So I think we need to do a little more research on this.
Okay. So I'm hearing, Chris, that we can remove the building from 24.
Well, can I just ask a question for that? So do you want me to take that amount out entirely, or do you want me to slot it in a different year?
So let's just actually have a concern or comment about it.
No, I guess my question is, like, what's the timeline of all of this working out? So let's say we decide next year, you know what, we're going to need a separate space to house all of this equipment for this gigantic park we're getting. What's the timeline of then approving that, designing it, having it built, beyond us taking dedication, beyond us needing to maintain the park? I'm just thinking into the future, because when we defer it now, it means it's going to, you know what I'm saying?
I understand.
I don't know that I'm as quick to say, let's not do it this year.
I think we have to grow into the park and what it needs, both in terms of equipment and where it gets stored. I certainly think we could, you know, assuming we get handed over a really well park that's ready from day one and not need a lot of maintenance and effort other than some You know, because that's part of the reason we want to wait, is to see what kind of events and what kind of fixes are needed as part of design before we're ready to take it. So if we wait, if we get through that over the next 12, 18 months, we should have a good idea as to, well, what is the long-term needs, what specific equipment do we need, is the room to store it here, and trailer it up? Is it really going to be that complicated? Do we really need a building that's, you know, that close, etc.? So I think there's a question about whether we need a building at all that we can't answer today. You know, waiting until next year might give us a better clarification on what condition the park's in, what equipment we really need to maintain it, whether the option is really to store that here, we've got a problem or not, and just evaluate it in more detail. But I'm okay with moving it as a placeholder to, you know, an hour at Christie's point.
We still have to keep in mind, we have emergency personnel and emergency equipment that has to be stored somewhere on site.
So let's take it one thing at a time. This is an $850,000 building to store lots of equipment that we don't know we really need yet. We don't know what the scope of it is.
But we're going to need something.
So what I'm saying is,
I would argue that we don't know if we need something at the location itself. I would argue that's still an open question.
It is an open question, but I think that's something that our staff will be able to answer now. I think that, I mean, I'm sure that
You
if
really-
we're having these conversations.
I mean, you need a
what-
stretcher.
You really know what you need right now. No, get stretched. For what we need right now, Mike,
That was really
you
We don't know what we
You don't know, do you? You don't know until you see what condition you get handed that parking, what shape the trails are in, what the final design is, what kind of issues you have with runoff or not. We don't really know. Correct.
When will you know?
When we get in there, when I guess the park's dedicated, we go in there and see what we got.
So what I'm saying is when the park is dedicated and we have to see what we got, and now it's on our, that we have to maintain it, now we're looking at, oh wait, we do need, all of these mowers, and we do need all of this equipment, and oh, I
But
guess
that's
we'll approve
okay.
that now and have that built in 2 years.
But right now, that trail is being used every day by people. No one is really maintaining it. So it won't be the end of the world until we wait till we get the park. We then say, look, we know what we need. We can get this equipment and that equipment. We can use it temporarily out of this township complex while we then build a building to put it in, if that's what we want to do.
I would recommend we treat this similar to the back truck. When I first came here in 21, we were talking about a back truck. It was in our plan. It was deferred. We evaluated things. Now Mark is saying about, you know, he likes the rental program, and we're kind of going down that route. I would maybe push the Greystone building to maybe 26 or 27. That would give us time to evaluate it, see what we need, and get an educated guess from Mike and his team to determine the path forward there. And by that point, in all likelihood, it will be dedicated to the township. So I think 26, 27 would probably be a good time for
So you're saying just push it down the line?
That way it's still in our capital plan in the event that we want to go down that route, but at the same time, it still provides the flexibility to do an evaluation like we did with the back truck.
That's good.
Can you tell me a little bit, what does $850,000 buy us? What are we talking about?
Unfortunately, Brian's not here. He actually spec'd out like the size of the building, but I don't remember off the top of my
A
head.
location, does he have a location in mind?
I want to say it was close to the large parking lot. That large parking lot up there. I want to say it was close to that. No, not by the dog park. There's a larger parking lot off of Aram Avenue.
And you're talking about,
Yep.
that's what I'm asking, the parking lot off of Aram Avenue?
Correct. I think there were two locations that have been discussed. One that was deeper in and one that was closer to Aram Avenue that I think came up during the tour. And I think that was the location. But I don't want to speak for Brian.
Okay.
But I think that was.
That would make more sense because they're more centrally located. But anyway, this is all down the road.
Yes, down the road.
So I would say
Move it to 26.
move it to 26.
All right, good. Are we done with parks?
Yes.
Very good. Let's move on to police. Police, we have two big items. Actually, they're all about the same. So, Chief Carroll, do you want to talk to the four items you have in there?
Sure. So two of them are replacement vehicles. One is an electric vehicle, one is a gas-powered vehicle for patrol. The electric vehicle is going to go to the detective. The RMS number is $50,000 for the computer system.
Yeah.
That's our report management system. That's what we type all of our reports in and certainly use in our day-to-day work. The one we have now, we've had since I think 1999.
2005.
All right. My memory's not as good. The company informed us at the beginning of last year they were going to end service on it. They have extended that, so we're not in a mad rush to provide it immediately, but they are going to end service on it sooner than later. We have located one that we like, we think will serve us very well.
It's a different vendor than you currently have.
So it's a different product. The vendor that we're going through bought the company that owns our current one.
Okay.
So it's a different product, but ultimately owned by the same company.
Going back to the two vehicles, so the detectives have had the electric vehicle for a little while. Are they satisfied with it meeting their needs? Or they have some reservations about it?
So I think there's always reservations when there's a limit on how far you can go. And they have 4 vehicles, so at times they probably choose to take another vehicle. But they're muddling through. But the limit on that, I think 4
Well, they're
advertises
good,
at 220. And realistically, a full charge of that truck is going to go, 180 miles maybe. So
it's range anxiety more than...
Range is the biggest, absolutely the biggest. The performance of the truck is fine.
Okay.
But range is the biggest concern, and most of what they're putting out right now still has a very limited range.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask, because obviously we have a project that we're, investing money in to make sure we have enough EV charging capability at the Township building. And part of doing that is to make sure that we're on a steady journey here with replacing vehicles where there's an opportunity to do so with an EV, and I want to make sure that this is meeting the needs of the detectives. And we think it is. Okay.
Is there a lot of miles on it? Is that why we're thinking about
On what?
2019's, the Ford Explorer and the
Yes,
Chevy,
both of those are higher mileage cars.
like 100,000?
No, less than 100. I think I don't have that number in front of me. I can get it to you.
Just curious, okay.
The Ford Explorer has 79,657 miles on it. The 5243.
Yeah, so that's a patrol vehicle.
And those patrol vehicles, beyond the mileage, they have the idling hours too, which is a big issue on the engine.
And by the time it gets replaced, if it's at 80,000 now, it's going to be in the 90s. It's not going to get replaced until like spring or summer. When
Yeah.
things are going.
Okay.
They also have 5246, the Chevy Tahoe police.
So that's been changed
Yeah.
to further the electric vehicle target. We're going to hold on to that vehicle for another year
Okay.
and get rid of the 5204, which is one of the detective vehicles.
Is that,
Same
is it on
price?
this list somewhere?
It's on the list, but it's not highlighted to get rid of because we changed.
It's 128.
Same price
Same price as what?
Chevy Tahoe only
as
has
the Chevrolet?
Well, the price is for a replacement, so yes, the same price as the replacement.
That's the 2016 Ford Explorer, right?
You don't have
What did you
anything
say
in
you
minute
were,
price.
what did you say you were swapping
The
the top?
Tahoe for the 5204, it's on page 4.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah. And then Mike, in terms of something that's needed in terms of a placeholder, let's call it out at this point, to be able to support any issues in the Greystone Park. Can we evaluate that as we get further into 24 and see whether it's e-bikes, whether it's really
So I think the e-bikes we can evaluate, that's primarily going to be a patrol function, and that's going to be up to the board when we want to start patrolling that area. I think the bigger need is for some type of emergency response. There are people using the park, and right now we don't have the method of way to get back in there.
Yeah. So if something was to happen today, what would happen?
We would be on foot.
Go ahead and foot.
Or call parks or the room, I guess we would borrow something.
And then how would you get the people out on foot, carry
Figure it
them?
out.
So is that the role of the ATV then?
Yes, that would be for emergency response here. And we certainly could use it if there's an issue, we had to go back there and check on something, but primarily, we can't get back there in an emergency.
So they won't be patrolling?
So I would not like to patrol on the ATV when the park is open, because I think that would be problematic for people in the park, but the park isn't open right now, so if we needed to get back there for any reason, we could do that.
Is the ATV gas powered or is it electric?
That price is for gas power.
So So board, are we good with having a placeholder in for the police department to purchase an ATV?
So where would you keep that here?
So that's an excellent question. We had discussed keeping it in some space up at the skate park, but I don't know where that stands right now. Big space.
There's like an enclosed area.
Mike, you have a gator up there now, right, in one of those sheds?
There's 2 gators up there.
So you can swap one of those gators out for this? Yeah.
Or couldn't the chief use the gator that's existing there right now as an emergency?
So we could use it, but it doesn't have it. I mean, we budgeted like $5,000 to upfit the ATV, so it had everything we needed, certainly.
Oh, with lights and that kind of stuff? So you need a special one just for the police? Well, do we need a bells and whistles gator right now? I can see where you need the lights and all that when there's people, when it's open.
Not just lights, it's when it's in the middle of winter, it's enclosed.
Ours aren't enclosed, they're all open.
They're all open.
Well, I think it's necessary because there are people back there.
Yeah,
And obviously,
it's gonna be-
if something happens, we need to be able to get back there.
Well, why don't we do this, why don't we include it on the list, and let's have a look at how you spec it out, and bring it back to the board, and we'll kick it around with you and the team, and we'll say, that looks good, or...
So this, I guess it's not your, I do have a spec'd out version of the quote, but it doesn't have all the outfit.
Yeah, so let's kind of have another look at it when you're ready to say, all right, this is what we would like, these are reasons why. Very good, have a deep conversation on it.
Yeah. How much are the bikes?
3,700, 2,800 piece.
I think they're
budget
3,000 each.
Okay. So
Did he
you
say
said
you-
you'd be comfortable sort of deferring that until we know.
So yeah, they would primarily, obviously, they wouldn't necessarily be for emergency response, it'd be for patrol purposes. At least looking at the gators on the trails, it pretty much takes up the entire trail when you're going down it. So patrol, you're just going to be chasing people off the trail all day long. Which they wouldn't love.
But obviously the patrols won't start until we take dedication on the park.
That's kind of a...
But we could use the gator now. We could use the gator now though, because if something goes happening, then we have to get back in there.
Correct.
Okay.
So was there a direction to the chief about e-bikes, hold off for now?
Yeah, I say hold on.
That's okay. All
Is
right.
that okay? Would that work with you? You comfortable with that?
I can work with anything.
Steve, you have a question?
Yes, just one question while you're on the police budget. I noticed there's a dozen vehicles for 2025 that are on the list. Would it be prudent to possibly move some of those up, particularly ones that may be troublesome or maybe more valuable?
That's how they all got on 25, because we've been pushing them all for years. So they're not, certainly don't intend to buy those vehicles at 25.
Well, but sooner or later, it might come in. We're just...
I mean, it's a good question, Steve. I mean, obviously, when we go through this list, it's kind of a, here's the ideal case, and boards push things out further. We tend to find a way through with most of these decisions. I mean, one of the things, as you know, is we're trying to say, in the next year or two, will there be an EV that's good enough to be a police interceptor? You know, I'm sure they're working on it, but it's not where it needs to be today. So one part of the strategy of waiting a little bit and seeing if we can keep some of these vehicles a little longer is to try to see if we can take advantage of an EV when it becomes possible.
So does maintenance costs of these vehicles for trying to keep them service outweigh the cost of...
Well, you know, it's a vehicle, it might be fine or it might not, so.
I mean, I'm all for EVs, but they just aren't quite there yet.
Yeah. So we're making the decisions that we can as they come up. So they're not there for the interceptor. We're going to buy another one in 24, but we believe the detectives one is perfectly acceptable, and we're going to buy an EV for detectives vehicle. So when we get to 25, if there's 6 vehicles on the list, we'll see where we are, right?
We will.
Okay. Any other questions? By the way, if there's anyone who has questions as we go through this, please raise your hand because we're kind of going through them one at a time. So if you've got a question about the police stuff, does Doug have a question on the police vehicles or?
Well, something that was the very first thing we wanted to do something with the meeting room. I was just curious.
We're going to come to that in a bit because the administration facilities one is at the end of the list, so we'll be able to, you can ask your question then. Anything else on the police list?
Yeah, I do. Like, why do we have license plate reader listed twice for $18,000, 825 budget?
There's more normal.
There's a lot of,
Yeah.
but I don't know why that, so I don't.
These are the two that are mounted in the cars.
Okay.
It's because they own more than one of them.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why they're on that place. They're two separate pieces of equipment.
And then the ones that are being replaced in 27 and 28 license plate readers are, again, because they're in...
So we own 4 vehicles with license plate readers on them.
Okay.
They were all 4, I think we did buy one, but most of them were given us through grant, but they do have a replacement time period. I don't know that we would replace them, but that's the time period for replacement.
Okay.
So Christine, you have you captured the updates? Chris and Christine, you've got the updates for the police?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we'll move on to roads department now. So let's see, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 large items of equipment and some diagnostic scanner as well. So Mark, would you like to headline the reasons for the requested replacements?
So I have the large loader, the wheel loader, the cat loader, that's on its 10-year replacement plan. I have truck 103, which is an international, also on its 10-year replacement plan. And then truck 112, which is a utility Ford F550 on a 7-year plan.
And these prices in here, do they include trade-in estimates or not?
No.
So we've gone back to full price. Okay. And do you know what the lead times are on any of them, Mark? Like the international one in particular?
It really depends on when the order bank opens up, and there's been a lot of delays in the order banks.
Do you think this could be a situation again where if we approve it and you place a purchase order, it's a long-term delivery and 6 months later there's an overage again? Do you think it could well happen or?
Definitely.
Okay.
And same with the Fords too, their order banks are very slow.
Yeah. I know from our MS4 permit compliance, we knew long-term that potentially 2 street sweepers would be needed to get around the whole township and do the necessary sweeps that would be to meet the requirements. I'm not quite sure we need to buy the second sweeper yet. I think I would say that it could be deferred for a little while. We're certainly ahead of the game with one. I mean, if we sweep certain streets and not every one, then we surely can get the credit for doing whatever's required under the permit, would you say?
Yeah, I went back in 2022 to keep pretty good data, and we did 9 laps of the township.
Of the whole township roads?
Yeah.
And that's being used full-time every day?
Yeah. Well, except for
For the winter months, right?
Yeah. And we took off 174 tons of debris in 2022.
I mean, again, I'm speaking for me personally, I think I'm comfortable with where we are. We're just about to redo our permit application, right?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially. We've got projects we still need to deliver on. We've got projects that are in flight in the design phase, Cal and engineering, that we expect to be constructed right in the next year or so. So I think in terms of moving forward with permit compliance, we're in good shape, and I think it's a good way. This is my view. Other thoughts?
Are we going to be still, in perfect compliance, and are we keeping up with what we need to do as far as our next program is concerned?
Well, the worst case is we submit our permit, which is due this year, and they come back to us and say, it's not good. I can't imagine that happening.
What's even the chances of that happening?
Exactly, that's my opinion. I don't think that's going to happen.
We're probably doing more than 99% of all the townships.
Exactly.
Yeah, you are. Most people are kicking it down, kicking the can down.
So let's do what we did with the new building. Just move this out to 26 for now, and we'll see how well we're doing with our permit application, the construction of the projects we have to do, the pollutant reduction, and continuing success with the existing sweeper. Okay. is the board okay with the other three main equipment items for roads?
This is the 10-year schedule, right? So it's due. 10 years for these pieces of equipment, it's time.
What kind of condition do you think you describe them as being in?
I would say above average, personally.
Do you think these are equipment we might get good prices on municipal bid versus trade-in? I think we did it, one we got higher than the trade-in and maybe another one we didn't.
We did very well with the skid steer and the Mike Moffett. What was the truck we sold at the end of last year? Was it a jet truck?
That was a tank truck.
Tank truck. We did very well with the tank truck from sewer and the skid steer earlier this year. We didn't do as well with the recent police vehicles that we sold.
Which we had a good reason why that was okay.
Okay. But I think, Mark, if you looked at wheel loaders to get an idea on what...
I have not, but I think the new loaders, the estimate I got was $295. Ours has over 4,000 hours on it. And it's a little rusty, but I think we're going to get between $70,000 and $90,000.
Municipal or trade-in?
For municipal.
Okay.
If you wait too long, you begin to lose more and more.
I mean, Mark, you came in pretty good with the skid steer. You hit it pretty right on.
Yeah. I mean, you got 42 for the skid steer.
Mm-hmm.
The loaders, a lot more.
Okay, so I'm hearing that the board's in favor of keeping the other three items on, as well as the scan, the diagnostics and information scan. Yes?
Yep.
Okay, any public comments or questions about roads, investment, speed?
The street sweeper.
Yeah.
I know it's part of the DEP, but it goes up and down our street. And, if we had curbs, it'd be one thing, but we don't. So it just kind of blows into the yard or fix some of it out. I don't know,
Not sold on it on your
I'm not
street?
sold on the street sweeper.
So I've seen it both ways. I've seen it sweep the street and pick some stuff up, and Mark's got the numbers on how much debris it picks up. Again, is it worth doing every street in the township? I don't know. I mean, it's like, what are we learning from how to use it?
Oh, debris. You find that it's cleaning the drains up any better than that?
Absolutely. I mean, we used to go by hand and clean them, and you just use the top of the grates off.
But now we also have our back truck program in place, which Mark's budgeted another $150,000 for next year. So
That's a good question, Steve. I share.
Every time there's something down our street, my wife says,
If you don't have curbs, I can see where you can see that, but we do have curbs, it gets right up against the curb.
yes, it's where I'm going. That's why I understand the bird does it, because most of them have curbs in the bird, but we have a lot of,
And they have a lot more leaves.
yeah, they don't want to use it.
As long as we're meeting our permit requirements, that's the main thing. And we are. That environmental again.
Well, it's a good question, and it's probably another reason why we just need to continue to learn for a little bit more before we go for number two. All right, let's move on to sewer.
Yeah.
Mike's got a low number this year. But they must be must-haves, right, Mike?
Well, the lab sampler is item 233. That's a 10-year program. And NPDO's requirement to have these things operating 24 hours a day. So
Yeah.
we're going to place that. And the Gator's on its, I think, 6-year program. It does get beat up pretty good. Running around the land, running equipment back and forth. And I moved items 245 and 246 to 2025 to make room for the overages with the vehicles we're hopefully going to get this year or next year, and because they're in decent condition.
Okay. Any questions from the board? All right, I'm good with sewer. Let's move on to facilities. And facilities has one really big number, which is the streets building solar panels, which is in the budget at $750,000 out of a total of $880 for facilities. And we've had a couple of public discussions about the intention behind this project, the fact that we believe we're going to get maybe 30% credit for the overall design and construction cost for this project from the Inflation Reduction Act, and the fact that the project overall has a significant payback over its 30-year expected life of the initial solar panels. So I continue to support including that in the plan. Does the rest of the board agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, is there any public comment on that particular project? So again, we're going to talk about it, I think, later on a different agenda item.
I have a comment.
Yes,
So this is solar panels and electrical equipment?
it is a solar array on the Public Works building roof that will generate power on site that will be net metered to the grid. So we consuming it during day hours to the degree we can, fine. We'll be still importing from the grid. If we actually have a surplus, it would be exported.
So what I'm experiencing, I'm a project manager, engineering, construction, what I'm experiencing with all electrical equipment is supply chain is crap. 9 months out, and they won't tell you what price, and it's going up 4% a month. So I would just warn you, be very, very careful when you're planning these costs and when you plan to implement them. You don't know really until you place the order. Only when you place the order, they will tell you all the bad news. That you're not going to see it for a year. You're going to see a cost increase. They'll tell you when they place their order what your costs are. So things are pretty crazy out there.
Good comment, thank you. Also on the facilities list, this was the item that Doug was going to ask a question about, is a needed upgrade to this meeting room. So that's a placeholder or a budget number, Chris? What is behind the number there, the $80,000?
That's correct, and I know earlier this year there was discussion about training that had gone through and potentially making this more secure. So that number is to basically make this a secure dais, and that is up to you guys.
I personally, what do other board members think?
I think we're just fine with that. Judge our luck, but I think that.
Because other things are about spending $80,000.
What is a secure meeting?
Something that could be used in the event of a situation for security purposes.
Like an alert.
Like an alert.
To our police.
Mm-hmm.
Very much here.
But again, we have our chief here, we have an officer here. But this
We have our door over there.
has been discussed.
Yes.
This has been discussed previously, so we
Yeah,
looked at it as part of the budgeting process. Mike, was there any other improvements we were going to make to this as part of?
I think we're talking about putting it up on a platform for all the cabling and things like that. So we'd have a new cable throughway hatchways and things like that to access underneath of it. As you see now, everything's just tied up underneath there, cabling wise.
I'm not feeling a burning need to spend money on that.
No, I'm
Okay.
So we're going to take that out entirely? Take it out
Yeah.
entirely.
And then there's the other 3 EV charges are for as needed as we get vehicles. For example, if we get the other police
No,
EV.
those are the 3 projects in the bid that's currently under review.
Yeah.
And I had Christine put them in there depending on when the invoices come for that project.
Okay, so do we know we need all 3 at this time?
Those are the 3 that were in the bid that's currently going through the RCO requirement review. They'll come back to the board on October 3rd.
So again, do we need all 3 to purchase now? We can always pull it out. We've got, cabling is the most important thing on that project. So we only have 3 EVs in 24, right? So,
Well, excuse me for interrupting, there's one on order right now. I hope to get it this year, but it's, who knows.
All now?
No, vehicles, you said 3 EVs, we'll have to.
Oh, there'll be 4
If we get
vehicles.
this one in budget next year, that'll be 4, yes.
So definitely need 2 then.
So we have 2 plugs out here right now, but we don't have any more, so. The one
So
that's-
definitely 1, probably 2, but not all 3.
Correct.
Okay. I believe the bids for the project included the installation of 2 pedestals and a wall mounted one. And I think they were going to be For police, the police administration side, one was going to be in the Parks building and one was
Traffic.
and traffic.
The garage.
Yeah, so we got the garage one. We got that's where the detectives.
That's the one, that's the car, well, no, the traffic one is the car we're waiting on right now.
Okay.
Right now, the detectives and I use the one next to the park building.
So the one pedestal one was going to go over by the police administration parking area.
And one by detectives.
Yep, and one by detectives, and then the wall mount one for traffic.
Yeah. So when we go to award, because we're only doing a notice of intent to award, we can ask at this point whether, what the price would be for the deed for not installing one EV charger. Could ask that.
Could we, Kristen, if it was already part of if it was already part of the bid, they would just issued a notice of intent to award.
Yeah, we awarded it already.
No, they haven't awarded it. They've issued a notice of intent to
But
award.
see, and that's what I want to talk to you about it. Chris Peterson sent me the documentation that was submitted. I don't think there's another step for the board. The due diligence, make sure they're complying with the RCO, is not something that has to come back to the board. It's something that your staff can review and say, yes, they've met the requirements of the ordinance, go forward. So I don't think there's another vote to be taken.
Okay.
I think the vote to be taken was to accept the low bid, and the bid, notice of intent to award, goes out with the requirement that the bidder has to prove compliance with your ordinance. And they've done that through, I mean, there's a couple things I told Chris they need to go back to, but once they demonstrate to Chris and to you or whoever you assign it on staff, I don't think there needs to be another board vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to install it. Okay. So board, are we good with those?
So we're only doing two? A wall and a pedestal?
No, we're doing all three.
We're doing all
The
three.
contract will be to install three, so we're going to buy three. Is there any other comment on the facilities department total? Any public comments or questions on that? Okay. So we reviewed everything we need to review at this point. So we can update those changes and send out a revised list.
So, Mr. Chairman, with
It'll
those,
be with the preliminary, right?
Yeah.
correct. So, Mr. Chairman, with those reductions, this will be, the plan for 24 will be reduced by $1,180,000 with the overages from before that were previously discussed.
1.5. 2.5.
$2,404,210.
Similar to what we spent for budget for this
It's
thing.
roughly $1 million more, I believe, than last year.
Last year being this year.
Yes, being 2023.
That's big, that's that solar project.
Yeah,
particularly.
so,
I mean,
that's
yeah,
really
it's-
the
that's
main
the big
difference,
difference.
yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Very good. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you being here till 10 after 8 to go through that list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 9, solar or energy array on the Public Works building. So Chris, we're on to agenda item number 9, which is a follow-up from the last time we discussed this for the proposal from Keystone Engineering relative to the design bid and construction services.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so Kirsten Herzak was before the board on September 5th. She reviewed the proposal and updated her proposal based on the discussion with the board. The township solicitor reviewed the general terms and conditions contained in the document I provided and provided comments accordingly. They've agreed to incorporate the changes based on Kristen's review. I provided a red line version of what those changes will be to the board. The proposal has increased by approximately $8,500 for Keystone, which is roughly $75,400 for both phases of the work that would be done. It's been amended to include the development of front-end documents and the handling of bidding via pen bid. Keystone would handle the preparation of any addenda that would be necessary and do all the notification for the apparent low bidder. The technical scope remains unchanged, and Keystone would handle any change orders that would be necessary to review on page applications. In speaking with Kirsten does not anticipate Carroll Engineering's component to be unchanged, and I provided what they would be doing accordingly, which we discussed previously can be handled on a time and material basis, and is just under $5,000. So the total based on both costs is $80,360, and this would be paid out of the funds allocated for the administration of the capital reserve fund budget.
Yeah, so thanks for getting the update from Kirsten, and I appreciate, Kristen, you taking a look at the general terms and conditions for us. I would suggest to the board that we do not need to approve the full amount tonight, because this is a project that, as you know, is a design build by the bidders, and Keystone's role at this point. We can certainly just authorize the design and bidding services phase, which is the lump sum amount of $29,900, and once we understand what kind of bids, etc., we've got, and what kind of work might be required during the construction phase for oversight from a township perspective, we can then work with Keystone or whoever to decide what construction phase services we need. So I would support tonight just approving a design and bid phase service from Keystone.
Is that 45,000 subject to change at all?
Well, it's time and materials, so that tells me at this point in this overall process, Keystone themselves are not sure exactly what that will be needed during construction, so we certainly don't need to authorize something that seems fluid to me. And until we've seen what the design looks like and the extent and scope of the work, it would be premature to authorize that, in my opinion.
What would the $29,900, what is the scope of that work?
So it's under section 2.0, bidding services.
2.1?
2.1, and under 2.1 it also talks about the drawings anticipated for the project, which is the sketches necessary for bidders to understand the extent of the solar array on the building.
And I guess that's my question under 2.1 is, I'm not quite sure what they're providing, as they're saying Keystone anticipates that the bidding contractors will be tasked with providing a detailed design submittal for approval as part of their contract terms or requirements. Keystone is not providing detailed design engineering for this project. Keystone's drawings will be prepared using the latest version of AutoCAD, and the specs will be in the CSI master spec format on Microsoft Word.
Yeah. So remember Kirsten was here and she said that they would do enough sketch diagrams to enable bidders to understand how to tie into the electrical grid here at the complex.
But not the actual specs.
Not the spec. The specs are going to be all provided here. Following technical specification sections and that are anticipated in this project, they're going to be provided to the bidders. So all that list there will be provided. So we're not burdening anyone on staff for coming up with these specifications for a bidder to adhere to. In addition, they'll give the sketches that are necessary to understand where this is going, how it's going to tie in. There'll be sufficient information for a solar contractor to offer a design build package for us. And then they will evaluate those bids as part of the bid services and have a recommendation based on the capabilities that are being provided.
Okay. And I have one other question for responsible contractor evaluation and certification. I guess I don't know what's involved. That's why I'm questioning 8 hours to do that function. It's just be saving money on
Well, that's Carol's job.
That's Carol, yeah.
That's
It
Carol's
does take
job.
us, I mean,
It's a significant amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the timeline then of the design and bidding? This proposal, they said, is set for 90 days, so is that?
So that would be if the board just held on to this for 90 days, like the prices that they quoted here are only good for 90 days.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is if we defer the construction phase service payment.
It may change. We would have to go back to Kirsten to see if that number has changed. And I would anticipate going into 24, it might, given on rates. It could.
I mean, when I see T&M, that's
Scary.
it's just a number. I mean, they don't know how much time is going to be needed to oversee construction. They don't know exactly how long it might take. It's just an estimate at this point. It wasn't a not to exceed number.
It was listed as a not to exceed.
It was?
Yes.
What page is that on?
It is on pages under section 3.1 on page 5.
Yeah, not to exceed. Again, I just feel it's premature at this point until we know exactly what the scope of the project looks like.
What do you think Keystone's feedback's going to be on that? Is that something that they usually do? Is that fine?
I mean, they may understand. I mean, we've done it with other, the board essentially did that with Carroll Engineering for the regional stormwater study. You approved them to go forward with the first area for their analysis, and then they came back, presented the results of that, and then you authorized going forward with that. I mean, we've never used them before, but kind of to answer your question, it's not unheard of.
I can quote T&M not to exceed. That's news to me.
I mean, that's fine. If this is,
But to Sean, I think your point that you need to really even see what the bids come in at. I mean, if
Oh,
the
yeah.
bids come in at a number that's just way beyond what we budgeted, you may not meet that.
Exactly,
Right?
but yeah. But
So you
not
now
right.
enter something with, I mean, I guess you could out.
Yeah, you just say we're not going to do that phase, so we don't rebuild for it. But I just think it's not necessary at this point. We've got an indication of their cost to do the project administration phase of this construction phase services of it. So, you know, we would, depending on what it ends up, it could be less or more or the same number.
I mean, as far as their hourly rate, that may be something that increases, but as far as whether if they need work to do, that might be something they agree to do at a different rate.
But we could always bid it to someone else.
You never know, yeah.
Remember, Keystone have not done this, as far as I'm aware, on this. They've not done this for a solar project before. And this was relatively new, and I asked a question of them about, is this capability within your wheelhouse? And she said, we think it is, and we're willing to go for it. So I think that's another reason why not to authorize the whole amount.
okay. Great.
Okay, so is there any other discussion from the board?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to, let me see. So I'm going to, yes, I'm going to approve the lump sum price of $29,900 for Keystone Engineering to provide design and bidding phase services for the installation of a solar energy array on the Public Works Department facility. Is there a second?
I will second that.
And that will cover just the 2.1 strip of work,
Correct.
and not 2.2.
And not 2.2. Thanks for clarification. Is there any board comments or questions on the motion? Is there any public comments or questions? Yes, sir.
So does that include a rough order of magnitude estimate and a preliminary schedule?
So we had already received from a solar energy builder a scope of kind of an estimate of what this project would be, and that's how we came up with the number that's in the capital project, the 750. They looked at the building, they looked at the requirements that we have, and kind of ballparked it at that.
Okay.
It's not to say we won't be surprised when the bid comes in.
Okay.
Doug?
Why do you want to do anything? I wouldn't have pay Keystone anything if they haven't done this before. Well,
We need someone to oversee on the township's behalf a bidding process and a selection process from someone who's doing a turnkey project. We don't have the man hours, the expertise, or the time to look into it from a staff point of view. So we need to use a professional service provider. Keystone has done pretty good work for us. We're using them for they know the infrastructure of this complex, they know the standards. They designed the EV charging system design, network tie into our panels, etc. And although this is relatively new for them, it's certainly not beyond the stretch of imagination to be they're perfectly competent and capable of doing this, and we're authorized them to do it tonight.
but are there other companies that have done this before?
There are, probably. We're comfortable with our professional service provider, Carroll, and their electrical design engineer to ask them for a price, and we've got a price, and we feel comfortable with it.
So Carroll is approving Keystone?
Carroll is more a civil engineer. That's who they employ, a lot of civil engineers. When they need electrical work doing, they sub and use Keystone Engineering to do that work. Okay. Other questions? If you're ready to take a vote, all in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next up is agenda item number 10, which is relocation of voting precinct West Goshen S3 to West Goshen M1, which is the Township building location for the 2023 general election. Chris, do you want to just advise the board how this request came in?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, so this is a request from the Chester County Department of Voter Services to relocate the voting site from West Goshen S3, which is precinct 285 at Glen Acres Elementary School, to the Township building, which is currently used as the voting location for precinct 265. Representative from the Department of Voter Services contacted me regarding this possibility due to construction occurring at Glen Acres Elementary that will impact their ability to serve as a voting location of that precinct. Speaking with Voter Services, they provided estimates from the last municipal election on the number of voters that they anticipate to utilize this site. So the only question that's really before the board this evening is to allow this to go through and for the 2023 municipal election. It's my understanding that this would not be permanent.
So do we know if Voter Services looked at any of the other voting locations?
I do not know.
And Mr. Golden, I think the name was Golden?
Yeah.
Yeah. You raised some points about, parking, weather protection, etc. And, East High School is a pretty good location for that. And that's probably even closer to S3.
East High School would be a much better location.
Yeah. So is this a suggestion or is this the only location that the county would accept?
I do not know the answer to that question. They contacted me and asked if they could move it here for the municipal election due to the construction at Glen Acres. I don't know if they evaluated other sites.
So are they asking because it's the Township building, they need approval to use this building? Are they asking if the board has any over? I wasn't aware that the Township board had any approval of where the location was.
It's because it's the Township.
Because it's Township building. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I just want to make sure I was clear on.
Yes, sir. Would you just state your name, please?
Jeff Rice. I live in S3 and I built there at Glen Acres and it's with John and it's been under construction for some time. Where we vote has been under construction. The last two elections we had to move around to the back of the school in order to vote. And we've asked Voter Services on many occasions. Actually, I've been up there a couple of times asking them to maybe change the location, what have you. At the last Chester County voter meeting, we had recommended that they make the change to be able to, because it's not very convenient, because it's around the back and people don't know where it is. So, however, I think right now it's very close to the election, and I think if we're going to do it, I don't know when the construction is going to be done. So I think ultimately it would be good if it still is in our precinct, which Glen Acres is. So hopefully it would stay there. I don't know when the construction is going to be done, but I suspect it won't be done for some time. We still vote in the gym, it's just how you can access the gym. But I think we're too close to the election, this election. Maybe if it was done in May, that'd make more sense. And I think that's what they're looking for you to do, to go back to them and say, does it make sense where to move it and at what time frame it is?
Why here?
What's that?
Why the Township building? Why not?
They're trying to find public buildings.
They're trying to find public.
Correct.
Well, I agree with you. It's very close to the election. So if we say we think it's better east, now they're going to have to go back on that
There's a
east
school board meeting.
and do all of it. And
Not
it
to
just
mention
seems
public
near-
notice, right? So we have to let people know.
Yeah, so.
And I think that's the county that has to let people know, not
Is
the
it?
township. I'm pretty sure.
County Voter
You don't have
Services.
any obligation now to say it's at the township.
You don't have any legal obligation.
No.
I mean, if you.
I would put it, truthfully, I would put it in the e-newsletter as a way to notify people, because I think that's just good public practice. But no, it is not our obligation to send mailers or anything, but that would be up to Voter Services.
And what about the school board's obligation or the school's obligation to tell people it's no longer here, it's here?
Yeah, it's all Voter Services.
All Voter
Voter
Services.
Services.
But are we even equipped here to accept that? It sounds like
And-
it needs to be
and I-
evaluated before we can make a decision.
I just want to make one.
Well, the Township building is currently a polling place.
Yeah.
We are currently a polling place
Yeah, but
for,
you're increasing the volume, which means you have to have more parking spaces, you have to have a lot of
well, what I,
additional stuff now, it's a different circumstance.
Fire services probably vetted that before they would have offered it as a location.
You sure, Krista?
That's what
I think so, yeah, I do think so.
I mean, have we had any dialogue at all with voter services? Just come in?
It was one conversation.
They go through this. I mean, I've dealt with voter services for some of our stuff. I mean, they have standards they have to meet. They have to look at, there's actually the election code has requirements they're looking at. So I don't think this is just like West Goshen Township. I think somebody analyzed it, somebody looked at it, and
so based on the input they've received from residents, etc., they've made the determination they want to move it. Is that the case? I mean, we're not here pushing back saying, why not just keep it where it is? They want to move it because they believe, for the reasons that have been articulated, it makes sense to have a more safe, accessible voting location for this election. And if we approve it here tonight, that, from voter services perspective, is a good solution. Is that correct?
What I was told by voter services when they contacted me is they asked to move it for the 2023 municipal general election. I did tell them that I do not know if we are equipped to handle such things as like a presidential election in 2024 from a parking standpoint.
This should just be a one and done kind of deal.
until the school is done, the school construction's
Well,
done.
I don't know if change
The
their
school's been
voting
under
places.
construction for a
It's
while.
been, yeah, we voted the last, both the primary and the other general
But they
at
probably have,
22. Yeah, we had to move people around the back.
they probably have reached out to the school district to get an understanding of when the school district project will be completed.
We could still vote there, but I mean, if the election was in November, we could still vote at Glen Acres. It's somewhat inconvenient for people to get around the back.
They're probably ready to
say something.
So, but do you think, as far as serving the voters of that precinct, it'll be better for them to vote at Glen Acres or here?
Yeah, if I could say something. First of all, I'm not sure what the alternative location is. I thought they were talking about this building right here.
They are.
They are.
You're too small. You're way too small. You need over 20 parking spaces, dedicated parking spaces, and where
But
would
we're currently a polling place already. There are voting machines delivered here. People vote here currently.
How many parking spaces do you have up there? You have way more.
Yeah, more than 20.
Yeah, you have way more.
We
than
park a
20.
lot of parking.
When it comes to
parking?
Yeah.
we have plenty of parking. We have that lot out there, a few spots dedicated, but we also have the northern lot where people will park for, say, bus trips and things like that. So we have adequate parking here.
Okay, I apologize. I thought the parking was limited to what's out front.
No.
It's all the way back to the other building.
And we have accessibility, we have an elevator for to meet ADA compliance, things of that nature.
I mean, I would expect voter services to know how many folks they need to man this location if they're combining two precincts here, right? In terms of the ability to, once you get in here, to be able to get ready, get checked in and vote. I mean,
Well, because of the volume, we need to increase our police presence.
The police?
There's not many now.
The police.
We're not increasing that, are we?
Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, like the police have no jurisdiction over polling places.
We're not allowed near polling places.
And unless there's an incident, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
My-
mine is
my
less like
only request-
different areas in the building. That might be what you find out.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
My only request is that we really consider going back, and I realize they're trying to do it for this election, which is coming up. I don't think there's going to be enough time to notify the residents where they're going to vote. We also we don't have a judge of elections, we have an interim judge of elections. This will be their first election on top of it. So I think we're getting too close into the weeds in terms of election, and people will not vote. They won't know where to vote.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
concerned about
that's
that.
my concern too.
Yeah.
And so-
Can't they put a sign on the door at Glen Acres?
No, so where did this
who's gonna-
request come from?
This came from voter services.
Contacted
Directly from
Greg.
No
voter
one
services.
at the school or anyone
No.
there. Voter services made the decision, we don't think that people should vote here because it's.
They contacted me and said, the Department of Voter Services contacted me late last week and said they do not believe that Glen Acres would be a suitable polling place because of the construction that's occurring, and asked if we could be a polling place for the 2023 municipal election.
My understanding is that the construction's gotten to the point where they have to use the space where we would normally vote as part of their construction going on. So it won't be available for construction, for voting. That's why they have to find another spot.
That was not what I heard, but I can't confirm or deny that.
So just a question for you gentlemen. So you've been going to the county commissioners meetings, the election, and you've been saying what a problem it is that at Glen Acres now because of construction. And that might well have precipitated voter services, even now, to your 11th hour saying, well, we should change it. So are we a kind of a victim of your success, if you like, of, yes, now they're hearing you, but now you say, well, it's so close, you're not.
Very possible, absolutely. That's what happened.
Mr. Golden, if I can ask, when was the meeting that you went to where you kind of voiced this concern?
That would have been the June, early June meeting.
Certified election.
And really, it came down to two things, and they were both related to safety. One is, it was appalling that they didn't have handicap parking around the back where they insisted everybody drive back there. The other one, they didn't have any signage to tell people where to go, so you had a bunch of handicapped people parking in the front and then walking the equivalent of at least 2 city blocks to come back to find the doors to where they could vote. Half of them couldn't make it the way back to their car. So that's where the complaint started. There's no reason they could not have decided to improve a temporary handicap parking in the back of the building if that's where they want us to go. I looked at it last weekend, and they're done with that end of the building. And now they're working on the other side of the school. So I don't know why they don't use the existing handicap parking in the front, and we go back through the doors that we used to go back to. I don't think it's right to assume that voter services is putting their brain power on this problem.
They have,
And they haven't thought through anything.
The election code has standards for what the polling places can be.
Right.
So I don't think they just willy-nilly pick something. I think that there was some thought into it.
Well, they've been willy-nilly for 2 elections now.
Okay, well, there might be, they have to make sure that there's ADA accessibility. If it's an active construction site, they want to make sure it's not a dangerous location to be inviting people to.
Right.
So I have more faith that there was some thought process into it.
Well, I'm telling you, for the last 2 elections, they've ignored everything.
Right, well.
All ADAH regulars.
What do we have tonight? The board can just like to use this location, we could presumably just approve it, and it's up to them to decide whether they're actually going to move it here or not.
That's correct.
And then, if residents don't object to that change, you can continue to lobby voter services and say, although you've got another authorized location, we feel you want to keep it at this late date at Glen Acres. It's up to the residents, I would think, at that point.
I will say, I made it clear that I do not believe we can accommodate the influx of 2 precincts for like a presidential election.
Yeah, it's next year.
Yeah. Well, they were originally talking about,
Making it permanent?
no, not making it permanent, but more than just this cycle.
Well, it doesn't mean they're not going to come back with a request to do it next year.
Yeah.
But we can just authorize it for this one election, I presume.
Yep.
And then after that, we could always say, no, we're not doing it in 2020.
And that gives you more information, get more understanding.
Yeah.
It might be that the school district went to them to say, we don't feel safe continuing to allow it as a public place for polling. I don't know.
Is it reasonable, before you vote, to go back, I mean, you can vote, but reasonable to request what the notification process is from, is the township going to notify?
The township's jurisdiction.
Township isn't going to care. But
Well, no, it's not a question of not caring, it's a question of we don't have jurisdiction to do that.
That's voter services.
That's voter services.
But
However,
we can help.
Will
you let residents know?
We'll publicize it through like our e-newsletter.
We're not talking about having the expense of having to do a mailing to every physical house.
No.
We're saying
Robocall?
we can do e-news channels, etc., social media, but it's voter services that needs to be able to contact residents.
Understood. My question is, do you know what they will come back with now?
No, I do not.
Okay.
And I don't want to recommend that the board authorize expending resources over something they don't have jurisdiction over.
Because then they get blamed if it's not done to somebody's satisfaction.
So could I ask, would you use the township robocall to notify all residents?
I would not feel comfortable doing that.
It's not the job of the township to do that. It's voter
Well, it would
services.
be a great tool, and it does reach all the residents. I don't think voters.
Only the ones that are registered.
Only the ones that are registered, and we've tested it and found gaps, and we do encourage people to sign up for it, but that's not a perfect system. I would use our e-newsletter that would probably be a good system to use.
I'm having second thoughts about getting too involved in this process at all. Because if we put something in the news and we don't send a robocall out, all of this can come back and what you'll notify us this way, but you didn't know it. It's not our responsibility to notify at all. So I really, and I understand where you're coming from, and I agree that we need to get as many people notified as possible. But that's not our responsibility. That is voter services. We are authorizing voters to use this facility to vote, potentially. But we are not, in my opinion, I do not want to take the responsibility of notifying every person.
No, it's not our job, it's not our decision. We're just offering them a place to have those voters from S3 to come, to vote, that's all.
But we're between a rock and a hard place, because if we do nothing, we'll get blamed for why didn't you have on your website that this was the location. And if we do something and we don't reach everyone, like a robocall, it's like, why was I not notified like my neighbor was, etc. So it's impossible to win in kind of that public notification.
Why don't you find out more about what voter services does before you make that determination?
We can. That doesn't have to be made now.
Yeah.
So if we just focus on what we need to do tonight, we need to decide, is the board going to be willing to approve the move of S3 to M1 as a voting precinct for the 23 general election? So, board, you've heard all the points. Is someone willing to make that motion? I should have made a motion to accept that if voter services so deems, and that S3 can be moved to M1 as a voting precinct for this election only.
For this election.
Okay, for a second.
No, sir.
Okay.
I also have a question, is if something happened because we're not compliant, because they didn't look into it, then we should have been compliant, and we have liability.
There's no liability, it's not your decision.
I'm talking about somebody gets hurt because we didn't have something we should have had there.
We're already compliant with
Yeah.
the requirements for voting location.
But Christy, do you feel comfortable with being able to handle the extra people that day?
Yeah, I think we'll be fine. For a municipal election, I think we'll be
Well,
fine.
this is off your election.
I know.
30% to show up.
I would like to note, we we have the polling locations and precinct information on our website currently. I found it. So we can just update that information on the website. It's already there for 2023. I don't see that as a problem. It's been up there for a while.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Is there any public comments or questions?
I just want to thank you for the robust discussion. I think everything that was said is very important, and shame on voter services for doing this in September, bringing this up in September. We should have brought it up in June.
Doug, you had a comment?
It's good to see. Go ahead.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I would just say, in talking to voter services, I don't understand why they didn't think about Fugate. I mean,
Yeah, that's easy.
it's a much larger facility, and there's all kinds of parking there, and it doesn't interfere with anything at East.
But it would still be the same location. It's still voting East High
Yeah, but they
School.
park in different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You vote in this room?
Yes.
Yes.
People, they'll.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I don't know if we have a follow-up call with voter services, but you can certainly explain that option, see if that was something they negated or haven't even thought about, and if they want to rush to the school board to get approval, fine. It'd be also good to know how they, if it is a mailing, so at least the board would have an awareness as to how people are going to be contacted, because we will get questions.
And my assumption is, in terms of Fugate, I'm looking here at the map of the polling places, they were probably reaching out to places that are already polling places. I don't think I see Fugate.
East is.
I see East on here.
Yeah, it's the same location.
That would be setting up a whole new precinct, basically.
Yeah, not new precinct, just using East High School is the best alternative. Okay, any other questions? Very good, we're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you for your input. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda is item number 11, discussion and possible approval of amendments to the emergency incident notification policy for West Goshen Township. So Chris, would you just like to highlight the two changes that have been proposed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So there, before the board this evening are proposed amendments to the Township's emergency incident notification policy. The Township undertook a tabletop exercise with the Chester County Department of Emergency Services and Energy Transfer on February 15th of this year. This was a follow-up to the exercise that was conducted in September 2021. And the purpose of this exercise was to test the Township's Blackboard Connect system in the event of an incident. There was an after-action report that was provided to the board from Department of Emergency Services, and it recommended certain amendments to the Township's emergency incident notification policy. The amendments outlined in the policy document before the board this evening are as follows. Section G has been amended by the Township's Emergency Management Coordinator, Andrea Testa, to align with the incident command system. The recommendation was to create a notification matrix. However, Andrea thought it would best to follow the ICS model. And then Appendix A has been amended in order to establish sample notification templates for different types of incidents, and due to certain character limitations for text and email messages in the Blackboard Connect system, the number of characters for each incident has been included in there.
I had one thing under planning, on Appendix A. I thought we were going to add Chris, Andrea, and Lisa, at least that's what my notes say, and Goshen Fire Company to that.
That was wasn't that to the people who that was the people who get notified with the incident, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't see it anywhere there that they were added. And because I know Goshen made a comment too that they wanted to be added. In the actual exercise we did, which I agree with, we should be. And then did we ever see, second of all, did we ever see the sample templates to Appendix A? I don't know if we ever saw that.
They're attached. I believe they were attached to there. So.
I don't remember seeing it.
Right here, sample Blackboard templates.
Okay, that's good. Right.
They were for highway incidents, bomb threats, all clear, pipeline, and then a test message.
Okay, that's good.
You good?
Just that one change here, just that one clarification or notification.
Which is what? Are we adding that into this for approval tonight?
Chris is going to look into it to see what we need to
So that's
add.
an action versus
An action.
not approving it. We're just approving these two modifications tonight, and then there's a follow-up also for Chris to look into that issue you raised.
Correct.
Okay.
What was that under?
I had it under planning, but it could be under something else. Notification authority would have been under notification authority.
We reviewed the policy on July 6th and determined that no updates were needed. If that's the right one that I'm looking at. Under planning, notification authority.
Yes.
Yeah, there was no change that was needed. We reviewed that on July 6th and determined that no updates were needed.
Okay. I have my notes that they wouldn't be added, so.
We can certainly add Goshen Fire Company to the notification, but that's who has the authority in which to. Okay, I remember this discussion. That's who has the authority to activate this, and that was vested in the EMC and the deputy EMC, and that's already covered under the general policy. So that does not need to include Goshen Fire Company. No, that would just be the EMC or the deputy EMC, and that's covered under Section C.
Okay.
So
that's already covered. That's already covered.
Okay, so, all right, so tonight we're just looking at approving these two changes, one to Section G to accept Andrew's recommendation, just references the ICS, and the sample templates that have been included in Appendix A.
Yeah.
I will make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ashley beat you to it, too.
All right, go for it.
Any board questions on the motion?
One thing real quick, one thing I did talk to Heather at DES about was we do these exercises annually with different types of incidents. We've kind of focused on one incident so far, but maybe changing the course of things.
But we did the training that was canceled this week was to do a weather or road accident?
Weather.
Okay. So it's a shame it got canceled, but we definitely in 24 will try to have DES work with us on another scenario. Are there any public questions on the motion? Very good. We're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Agenda item 12, reports for the month of August. Police report presented by Chief Carroll.
So the report from the Police Department for the month of August 2023, we responded to 2,140 calls for service. 68 of those were alarms, and 5 of those alarms were deemed valid. We responded to 52 accidents, 18 of which were reportable accidents, and we drove a total of 17,500 miles in our patrol. We performed extra traffic duties on South High Street, South Five Points Road, and Westchester Pike, Turner Lane, Airport Road, and South Ashbrook Drive, North Five Points Road, Taylor's Mill Road, and Greenhill Avenue. We attended our normal monthly trainings for SWAT and the Lexipol daily trainings. We also department-wide issue our yearly anti-bias training. Officer Manko attended basic narcotics investigator training. Detective Cuddy attended a criminal investigation using cellular technology training. Officers May and Riley attended FBI leadership training, and Officer Walsh attended the basic school resource officer training. Of the alarms that were noted, 11 were of the highest fine value this month.
Wow.
Yep.
What were it? September? So they've had 7 this year, this calendar year. Is that what that means, Mike?
Well, 7 or 6. Both of those are less. 6 or more is the highest. Yeah.
And with those alarms, I see that this was, because we increased the price, we had the highest this month, 68, compared to 46 and 52.
I would
That's
imagine
a big
as the year
increase.
goes on, it's going to increase because it's based on how many alarms you get in a year. So as we go on, we're going to get more and more of that.
Even though
So
we're
the
charging
year-
more money.
Well, it's up to them.
I think it'd be a good down on that.
So we performed 20 assists to other departments for a total of 20 and a half hours approximately, and we received 12 assists from other departments during the month. And the overall assist to the county on the search was counted as one incident, but obviously the hours were.
Could you give us a little bit more flavor as to the extent of the involvement of the PD in the overall effort?
For officer hours, it's probably in the area of 275 to 280 hours. I know 240 of it was overtime, but we did straight time assists when we could. So it's a lot of time and a lot of money. We shortened our staff here during the search so we can supply help.
Were the officers involved in the search? Have they had experience before of these kind of situations?
So
one of the first for many of them.
The SWAT team training, or the ERT team, trains every month, and so at least one time a year they train in woodland searches.
So the estimate for the overtime is about $21,000, wasn't it?
Just over.
Do you have an idea about how much it was the total cost for?
I would say it's probably between 23 and 25 when you figure in the straight time, but I don't have that exact number.
Okay.
Are there going to be any opportunities to get any reimbursement for that, do you think?
I hope. I've started a discussion. I've actually spoken with our DA. Didn't get a lot of love on that discussion, but we're moving on.
RDA?
Yeah, right.
Oh, RDA, yeah. I was looking at
Our DA.
The RDA, there's so many acronyms in the police. Okay.
All right.
Any other questions for the chief? Any public questions, Steve?
I just wondered, is there any resolution to that dog issue a few months ago?
So yeah, no, but there is scheduled court at the end of this month, but it hasn't been continued yet.
Yeah.
So they still have a problem?
It's less of a dog issue and more of a neighborhood issue, but yes.
Have there been any more attacks from this dog?
No.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you very much. We have our usual packet of information from Chester County DES, from Good Fellowship, and the prior companies, does the board need any follow-up on any of the information that was provided in these extensive reports?
I just have a question. Why did you talk to, well, why, but would the reimbursement come through the DA, or is that something that you would?
So I'm not sure where the reimbursement or if it will come, but I tried to start the discussion.
Could ask Brazil. They started the problem.
We may get you as much attention.
That'll go far.
Or the commissioners could ask them to John and discuss that.
So does the board have any follow-up needed from staff or anyone else related to the standard monthly reports from our emergency service providers? No? Okay, we'll move on then to agenda item 13, which is Board of Supervisor announcements. Start on my left, Tina.
Yeah, August 22nd, attended the police traffic safety meeting, which is very, very good. A lot of follow-up and very thorough, I should say. Brian was. So did a really good job, answered everybody's concerns. August 24th, we had a meeting with Goshen. September 6th, we had a meeting with the SPCA. John and I had a meeting with the SPCA to iron out some issues.
How did that go?
Extremely well.
They ironed out then?
It was more of an education type of thing that I really thought it was beneficial for, and I also suggested that they go to the other Township Board of Supervisors to discuss. I didn't know, like, for example, the amounts the townships give every year is only about 2% of the total budget. So we talk about other revenue sources and how they do it, and what the process is. When the police take in dogs that they get, and how that process works. Mike was there too, that's right. Yes. So I learned a lot from that process and why they do what they do, and where the fees come from, and how they're calculated. And I thought it was very good. And you, John? I think it was very successful.
Yeah, we covered a lot of topics. It was good just to have an opening discussion with them to open up the communication. We talked about the fee schedule, and Chris is going to be working with other municipalities this year because our contract is concluding with them at the end of this year. So he'll be involved with that. We also talked about what resources they have available for animal enforcement, like with this dog situation we just mentioned, what they would do and what they can bring to bear in situations like that. We also talked about they have some expansion plans there, which are rather
extensive.
Yeah, we're talking about a rather large administration building there, and also kennels over the next couple of years. They seem like they're pretty serious about moving forward with it too.
At that location, I think.
Yeah, right next door to it. They're going to build up instead of out. They're going to build up. And I got how many know what a definition of no-kill shelter is, and it's basically 5% of them are euthanized, but that's because they either have severe behavioral problems, or they're not rehabable, so to speak, or that they're severely sick, that they're not going to make it. So, I thought it was very educational to me. They were extremely cooperative.
That was one of the action items that came out of it. The CEO there, Adam Lamb, was going to contact our township engineer to find out what the ordinances would allow, so that this way they could find out whether they have to apply for any variances or anything of that nature. But it would help them in the planning process.
We suggested they come sooner than later after the design is done, so that Brian can help them design, and they like that. I appreciate that. So I thought it was very successful meeting. And you, Mike, did you think that was successful?
It was, and the overwhelming information I got was our bill will be much higher next year than it is this year. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah.
We also told them we have the e-newsletter available to them if they wanted to put out any notices or any information that way. So it was very productive, I think.
And then also on September 7th, went on the parks bus tour. It was very good to see all the parks in West Goshen, so that was great to do. And then on September 11th, I met with the staff for about 2.5 hours to review the existing West Goshen benefits policy for all employees. That's it.
Thank you. Robin, do you have anything? No? Okay, Ashley.
Worcester County is hosting its first Sustainability Summit on September 26th. We worked, so some members of the Sustainability Committee, our solicitor, myself, Chris, met to discuss some more about the EV ordinance that we were looking at. So that's being worked on.
You have a clear way forward?
For now, yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah. And I also went to Henderson High School to meet with a teacher there who reached out to me and Will Williams from the borough with this. She wants to plan a really interesting rain garden project for the school. And I think she reached out because we're in such close proximity to Goose Creek and we realize kind of what a problem area that is and if Henderson can do anything to mitigate that problem. And so it was really encouraging to see them taking some steps in that direction. So I would like to support her in that effort. So we're learning about that.
Thank you. John?
A lot of the items that Tina brought up also attended the the traffic committee meeting on the 22nd. We talked about various traffic issues in the township. Met with Goshen Fire on the 23rd of August, and we discussed the proposed contribution request for 2024. Meeting with the SBCA on September the 6th. We already discussed that. Participated in the West Goshen Parks tour on September the 7th. And today we had a meeting with Chief Carroll as part of our monthly board liaison meeting. Tina and I met with him to discuss various issues. That's all I have.
Thanks, John. Just have a couple of announcements. The board met in executive session on August the 18th, August the 30th, and September the 5th to discuss personnel matters. The board met in executive session on August the 22nd with police command staff to discuss public safety issues. And I participated also in a conversation with Goshen Fire on August the 24th, discussing their finances and funding requests. I also enjoyed the park tour on September the 7th. Chris, Township Manager's announcements.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First item announcement is we did receive a conditional use application for the Parkway Center. This previously went to the zoning hearing board for a convenience store with gas pumps. They were denied certain relief, but granted other relief that was requested. The application arrived middle of last week, and based on the MPC, we have 60 days in which to conduct a hearing, which would run through November 11th. However, we did speak with the applicant's counsel, and they are willing to grant an extension through November 20th to conduct that hearing. And they also provided dates of availability on November 14th, 16th, and 20th.
Do you need the board tonight to lock in a date?
I'd like to discuss with the board a date. I would look to do public notification, and it will go to the application will be reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on October 10th.
Does the board have the calendars with them? Can we agree tonight?
Yeah.
So they are a
14th is a Tuesday, 16th is a Thursday, and the 20th is the Monday of Thanksgiving.
The 14th would be your regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting for that month.
The 16th, you have a Cato conference. That's the Cato conference, the Mendenhall.
No, that's not it. The Mendenhall is the 9th. Actually got an invitation today. It's on the 9th.
It's on the 9th, the Cato conference?
Yeah.
Is it still at the Mendenhall?
Yeah.
So 14th, 16th, 18th, or the 20th?
14th, 16th, or the 20th.
14th.
Cox the 16th. 14th is the regular Planning Commission meeting night.
So you wouldn't be able to do it then? Right, don't they use this room?
They do.
I'm good with any date.
Well, the COG is the 16th still, right?
Yeah.
You guys all in town on the 20th? Week of Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Then you have your regular board meeting the next night. Your regular board meeting is the 21st that week.
20th? John, you go with the 20th of November? Would you prefer a different date?
Well, that, the 20th would be good. I'm going to be away starting on the 28th for 2 weeks, so that would be good.
Do you guys want to do a 6 o'clock start time, like your regular meetings?
Yeah.
Is that good? Okay.
6 o'clock, the 20th of November, which is what day is that?
Monday.
Monday.
For the conditional use hearing, okay.
And then you'll be back here at 6 o'clock the very next night.
That's fine.
right, so we will notify the applicant accordingly. I do have an electronic copy of the application, and we'll go to the planning commission for their recommendation on October 10th.
And you'll notify the residents.
Yes.
This was in the previous notification, right?
Yep, I'll follow the exact same notification radius as we did for the zoning hearing board.
Okay.
Partner with the Park and Rec Department, their next movie night will be on Sunday, September 23rd in Community Park. They'll be showing The Little Mermaid this week. That'll start at 7:30 p.m. There will be an art exhibit in this building on Friday, September 22nd, so this Friday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. here at the Township building. We also have all the bus trip available on the Township website, and we do have online registration available for our bus trips. Our e-newsletter is going to be going out at the end of this week. The corrugated metal pipe televising a soft dig has been completed for all the areas that were marked out in the analysis that was done by HRG. It came in slightly under the $54,000 that was authorized by the board. I think it came in around $48,000, so a little bit less. And Brian, Mark, Paul, and I are going to meet, when Brian gets back, we're going to meet on September 25th to review the results of the videos that were taken.
So we would like to have that on the first meeting in October's agenda for a recommendation from staff as to the highest priority items, and we tie that together with whatever monies we have left from the American Rescue Plan fund that we have, and see what we've got capacity dollar-wise to get on and fix.
Yes, that is our plan.
Very good.
The Balmar Street project has been substantially complete. Chris Peterson and Mark drove it yesterday. Chris has put together the punch list for it. Based on my conversation with Mark, I don't know if that's going to be if the punch list is going to be too extensive. They were very happy with the work that was done.
Yeah. I drove that to Fuller today. It was pretty nice. It looked like a good improvement for sure.
And the last item I have is the work on the shooting range is scheduled to begin next week. I think it's starting on September 26th, I believe. Is that correct, Mike? Yeah. Shooting range work is going to begin on the 26th.
Is that a 2-week project?
They estimated 2-3 weeks.
2-3 weeks.
And all the materials are in?
As far as I know.
Well, the lumber's being delivered that day, but everything else is in.
And that's being done in-house, right?
Correct. And Paul from the Streets Department is overseeing that.
I did get an email asking from a resident in North Hills about the status of our grant application request for the stormwater project. I believe we thought we would hear in the fall. I don't know if there's been any update on that, but it'd be good to see if there's any clearer timeline for when we would hear.
I can check with, I know since Chris's office handled that for us, I'll check with Chris Peterson to see if he's heard anything. I have not received any update on that grant application.
I think we said more like October, November, but that's right around the corner, so any extra clarity would be useful.
Yeah, I will email Chris Peterson tomorrow and get an update on that.
Any other questions for our township manager? Very good. Zoning officers announcements.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have any announcements from the zoning officer. There are no applications pending before the zoning hearing board, and there will be no meeting this month.
Did the zoning hearing board render a decision on the fencing at East High School's fields?
Yes, they met, they had a special meeting at the beginning of August, and they rendered their decision. They approved the relief that was requested. And I believe that plan is currently under review with Brian.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions about zoning? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 15, approval of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes of August the 15th, 2023. Are there any board comments on the meeting minutes? I have one on page 2. It's about halfway down the page, paragraph that starts, Ms. Smith asked about the possible installation of a solar energy array on the roof. Mr. Brower stated that a solar energy array has been incorporated.
It should be, has not.
You're right. That was the only comment I had. Is there any other comment? Okay. I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August the 15th. Is there a second? Thank you, Ashley. Is there any board comments or questions or any public comments or questions on the meeting minutes? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Next is agenda item 17, approval of the Treasurer's Report dated August the 31st for the General Fund, the Sewer Revenue Fund, the Waste and Recycling Fund, and the Capital Reserve Fund, and the bills to be paid from these funds. Are there any board questions or comments on the bills or the Treasurer's Report? Okay, I will make a motion to approve the Treasurer's Report and the bills to be paid from the funds as stated. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Tina. Any public comments or questions on the motion? Okay, then we're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. And with that, we just need a motion to adjourn. I will make the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay. Second, so all in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Chief, have a second?
Absolutely.
Okay, how's everything?
Good.
Have you tried the online software yet?
I have not, I haven't tried to register anything.
Understand. We had to sign over.
Yep.
There you go.
Actually, who's the Henderson team?